Hafide and good afternoon. Thank you everybody for being here with us today. Today's date is March 9, 2026. This afternoon's joint oversight hearing held by the Committee on Education, Libraries, and Public Broadcasting is called to order. The time is now 2 p.m. Before we begin, there's some housekeeping matters that I'll briefly discuss so we can get to work. The first notice of this joint oversight hearing was disseminated to all senators and media outlets on February 26, 2026, with its second notice disseminated on March 4, 2026. Notices of this hearing were also made available on Candid News Group, the Guam Legislature's website, our legislative calendar, and the Governor of Guam's public notice portal. Today's joint oversight hearing is being broadcasted live on the Guam Legislature's YouTube channel, and the transcript will be filed with the Committee on Rules and be made available on the Guam Legislature's website. Today, our committee will hear the following agenda regarding the Guam Department of Education and the Guam Education Board. The hearing will focus on the Guam Department of Education's transition update, double session, and the Simon Sanchez rebuild, CBA position fulfillment, maintenance updates, financial status and overview, update on ARPA expenditures, SPED staffing shortages, SPED resource allocation and support services, and for the Guam Education Board, the management audit review, employee grievances and retaliation. And at this time, we'll now welcome my colleagues who are joining us this afternoon, Senator Chris Duenas, Senator Sean Gumatautau, Senator Joe San Augustine, and Senator Chris Barnett. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. Before we begin, I'd like to remind everybody in attendance of the Legislatura en Guajan's general rules of conduct. Individuals testifying shall first be recognized by the chairperson before speaking and shall state their full name for the record. Questions and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of today's agenda. Personal inferences to the character or motive of any senator or individual testifying is not permitted. Pursuant to Section 11.07 of the 38 Guam Legislature Standing Rules, the chairperson may order the removal from the hearing of a committee or a subcommittee of any person who is not a member of the Legislatura en Guajan and who fails to observe proper decorum. Any violation of this general rule of conduct will result in immediate removal from this public hearing room. Now, since we've gotten the basic housekeeping matters out of the way, Dr. Wampet and your team, you guys are here already. We were going to invite you to sit. So thank you for being here, Dr. Wampet and your team. And Dr. Okada, would you like to, is there anybody else aside from who will be testifying today? Will the public auditor or IAO? No? Just here for questions? So the Sergeant at Arms can, if you can please proceed with swearing in these individuals. Yeah, and everybody who may, yeah.
Please raise your right hand. Under penalty of perjury, do you affirm that any and all information you provide today, whether it be verbally, electronically, and in writing, be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Chair, under oath, you may proceed. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'll go ahead and start with my opening. Good afternoon. Thank you, everybody who's here today. I want to be very clear from the beginning. This joint oversight was not the first option. Our intent has always been to maintain a working relationship with the superintendent and the department where communication is open, where questions raised by this committee receive responses, and where updates can be provided when issues are brought forward on behalf of the community. Public deliberation through an oversight hearing should not be the first step in getting answers from our institutions. In most cases, these conversations should happen through communication, collaboration, and regular updates between the department and our committee. Oversight exists for moments like this, when the public deserves clarity and when the legislature must ensure that concerns raised by our community are acknowledged and addressed. We're not here today because I personally want answers. We're here because the community wants answers. Constituents continue to come and email our office about concerns regarding the Guam Department of Education. Parents are asking about the long delay in Simon Sanchez, when that will finally move forward so that students can return to a permanent campus. Other parents continue to ask about the double sessions that have been going on for several years, and now, what is the plan to return students to a normal school schedule? There are also ongoing concerns and rumors about the delayed reopening of FBLG Middle School, and when timelines are unclear, rumors begin circulating about schools moving and plans changing. That uncertainty affects families across our island. Teachers and staff continue to raise concerns about longstanding facility and resource issues like leaking roofs, lighting in the fields, and other conditions that affect the daily learning environment for students. Staff members inside the department are asking broader questions about the direction and leadership of the department. They want to understand the vision for the department and what the path forward looks like. And when you step back and listen to all these concerns together, a common theme begins to emerge. People are not simply asking for explanations, they're asking for direction, for clarity, and for a path forward. Our teachers are dealing with them, principals are dealing with them, and staff is dealing with them. And most importantly, our students are living with the consequences. That is why the joint oversight hearing with the Guam Education Board is also important. The board plays a critical role in the governance and policy direction of the Guam Department of Education. And it's important that both leadership and governance are part of this conversation, especially in light of the findings from the recent management audit, which raised serious concerns about operations, coordination, and accountability within the department. This is not the first time the Guam Department of Education has undergone a comprehensive management and curriculum audit. The last one was conducted in 2009, and when we compare the findings from that report to the findings in the current audit, a troubling pattern emerges. Many of the same issues identified more than 15 years ago are still present today. Concerns about governance and oversight, procurement delays, financial management, inefficiencies, facility maintenance, and the need for stronger instructional alignment. The questions that are going to be asked today are not questions that benefit anybody on this committee. This oversight is about transparency and clarity for the people that we serve. The public deserves to know what is happening inside their public school system, and today we hope to receive updates on several longstanding issues that continue to come up again and again. The usage of lapsed funds, the condition of our schools, staffing and CBA positions, sped shortages, etc. Our responsibility as policymakers is to ensure that things like these issues that have been brought up, to include the audit, do not simply sit on a shelf. They must become tools for accountability, transparency, and progress. And so that in that spirit, we're asking for GDOE to be able to present a plan that is clear and concise and for people to understand where we're going. With that, Superintendent Wonpat, we look forward to hearing not only where the department stands today, but how you intend to move forward with a clear and realistic plan for our students in our schools. And with that, we'll go ahead and open up the floor for you to, or have you do your, present your slides. Dr. Wonpat, unless you have an opening that you'd like to.
Buenas and half a day, honorable senators, Senator Borja, Senator Duenas, Senator Gomez Tautau, Senator San Agustin, and Senator Barnett. On behalf of the leadership team of the Guam Department of Education, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the department's operational status, accomplishments, and priorities moving forward. Today's presentation provides the leadership transition update and other reports requested. Over the past 44 days, the new management team at GDOE has been actively assessing the department's operational and fiscal landscape. And on the first slide, which will be the first ones, will give you the challenges. Next slide, please. We encountered several challenges during the leadership transition, including expired or missing contracts, incomplete documentations, such as invoices and change orders, and delayed procurement processing. These issues affected several projects, including the management of approximately $2.8 million in HVAC systems, covering more than 2,500 air conditioning units across our schools, refurbishment projects in 12 campuses, and contractual services, including therapy services. We have 12 FBLG refurbishments in our schools that are about, on the average, at about 95% complete. The Tiny Eye, which is a teletherapy Services, which provides occupational therapy and speech language pathology services that was placed on pause. FEMA reimbursements was difficult for us to track which ones of these are actually FEMA because the POs do not reflect whether there are local or FEMA monies or expenses. The procurement processing also at the AG's office has been challenging at times. Several of our contracts have gone through these elongated processes. Additional challenges is that the 51 million that everyone likes to allude to as lapses, that we can't touch these monies because it is pending a statement of determination from first DOI, then US DOE. And then there's the 16 million prior year lapses from the Guam legislature. On personnel, it is difficult recruiting all of the teachers, school aides, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech language pathologists, and other specialized skills. These are positions that are not readily available to the department. There are also strict certification requirements. Basically, if you know that, yes, our neighbors are experiencing shorter educational hours, and many of them have decided to move on to either to relocate to Guam or to the US. What we're hearing from these teachers is that they are easily picked up anywhere from Hawaii or in the mainland US, but they have difficulty actually being recruited here in Guam due to either additional cost testing that sets them back from actually becoming certified to teach at the Department of Education. The Head Start program, there's been a recent visit, and unfortunately, 2 of our centers had closed due to the lack of enrollment. And I shared this, I think, in one of the senators' resolution presentation, is that they're competing with the universal pre-K, the pre-K gate, then of course with Head Start. Our CBA, high turnover rates, and also the fact that there are these limited term statuses that they're in, and of course the salaries that are low, which does not compare to the job demands. Specifically for those CBA positions, is that on the clerical side, we had filled 35 of those positions, and there are still 2 more vacancies. For a clerk for the nurse's office, we filled 24 positions, but there's still 12 openings. For the clerks for the library, we filled 14, but there's still 12 pending. Library techs, we filled 11, and there are still 13 vacancies. For the ELL, we have recruited 11, filled 11, but there's still 40 more to be filled. For SPED, for the classrooms in elementary and secondary, we filled 7, but there's still 32 vacancies. And for kinder, 7 were filled, but 3 are still vacant. Earlier in your last town hall meeting at DOE, SPED had mentioned the need to hire an additional 168 one-to-one aides, and we're requesting that out of the $51 million that we try to hire those aides. It is not, we don't have the funding to currently hire those aides, but we've done something where we've gone in and took the total number of aides that we have, which is about 700, and we decided that this spring we are going to cross-train all of our aides so that they'll be able to, in case there's an absence of any one-to-one aide, that should be able to cover. Since then, we have been recruiting and hiring, so the numbers has gone down from 160 to now 138. the next slide, which will be special education staffing challenges. Who's that? Who's covering that? You? Okay, go on.
Good afternoon. For special education staffing challenges, we, as
Can
mentioned
you
earlier,
just state your name for the record and your position?
yes, my name is Dr. Rizalina Liwag, and I am the Curriculum and Instruction Deputy Superintendent for the Guam Department of Education. Good afternoon. For special education staffing challenges, as mentioned by Dr. Judy Wanpat, our superintendent, we do have open job vacancy announcement for those positions, and we are lacking at least 5 occupational therapists and occupational therapist assistants, 3 physical therapists, 8 speech language pathologists, and the school aides is already mentioned. Besides that, we also are lacking teacher aides for special education, early intervention, and as well as teachers. The staffing shortages impact delivery of mandated services, despite recruitment and workforce development remains our priorities. We can go to the next slide, please. So the therapy services that are affected are the occupational therapies and the speech language pathology services. We do have 522 students affecting required occupational therapy and 132 students affected requiring speech therapy. And as an interim solution for now, parents were provided with a notice to temporarily seek services using their insurance with reimbursement for the 20% copayment. However, we also are trying our best to process the contract for these services, which is underway. So we're hoping that that contract gets approved soon and we resume back the services. Next slide, please. So the SPED resource allocation, as you asked, we have allocated an amount of 250,000 for speech therapy, 750,000 for occupation therapy. Most of the budget under special education, amounting $15 million sum, is under personal and salaries and wages. There's 300,000 travel, equipment of 347, supplies of 294,000, contractual is about 2 million. Other, which is capital outlay that includes purchase of the bus and other equipment, is 600,000. So, but the issue with this is we need to put maintenance of effort in order for us, for example, to purchase buses. So in order for us to use this money to purchase bus, then maintenance of effort has to be in place as well. For example, if SPED department puts 4 buses, then under federal funding, then local funding has to provide at least 2 buses. Next slide, please. So for early childhood education, we have we had a monitoring review 2 weeks ago by the Head Start program, and it was conducted on February 26th, and seems like it's a good news. It's an accomplishment that there was no preliminary feedback indicating no findings or deficiencies. So meaning that they haven't find, or they didn't find any deficiencies, but the official report is expected to be reported to us within 60 days. So we're waiting for that report. Okay, Dr. Julie will discuss the infrastructure improvement.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Julia Joa Heath. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Assessment Accountability. So infrastructure improvements across our school continues to progress. So for this slide, you're looking at the refurbishment project for the 12 schools. And as of March 5th, the completion is at 95%. The core tech will be completing this project by this Sunday. Next slide, please. For the sanitation and school safety, we have 5 schools that receive a grade A, and 13 with B, and grade C at 13 schools as well. We continue to ensure that we address all those deficiencies identified by Department of Public Health, and it is our goal that we will not see any grade C. As for the FEMA project, we have the campus perimeter fencing, and that was already awarded to Wang Brothers, pending arrival of materials. However, they're actively prepping the site area for the installation of the fencing. Now, for the mold mitigation, it was awarded to Pacific Restoration LLC, and there is some concerns with the mitigation, so I have not seen the scope of work. However, there is a difference between mitigation and remediation. So mitigation is to identify what we can do to prevent mold, and remediation is the removing the mold in the areas that have been identified. So we are reviewing the scope of work to ensure that the proper action is taking place, whether it's mitigation versus remediation. Yes, GSA is handling this, so I've yet to receive the scope of work from GSA. This includes the fencing as well. Okay, next slide. Oh, sorry. The ADA compliance, all schools have been inspected. It was completed the last day of February. And now our next step is to address those items. And much of the deficiencies are, for instance, the signage, the spacing for handicap, and the flooring. Next slide, please. So the facilities and maintenance update on the FBLG renovation project currently is at 89.44% completion. Remaining work still includes restrooms, the doors, electrical connection, and the AC installation. The lead item is the electrical connection. Due to the shutdown, that is a delay. And there are other issues that are still being faced by this renovation project is the fire suppressant, or the ANSEL, the fire alarm system, the bell system, the communication and IT, the gym, the demolition of the temporary building, which is the choir building, and also the old band room. So those things are being addressed. Next slide, please. Okay, and that is all for my report. Thank you.
Dispensa. Buenas ng saludo para todos, honorable senador. I want to bring into the picture our educators and the kind of support that we are providing, as they also are the main people, staff on campus that provides instruction. So the listed professional development that have been provided to our teachers, counselors, librarians, and administrators are listed, such as the English as a second language for families, the educational virtual reality training for classroom teachers, STEAM, which is science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, connected with robotics, career technical education training for our CTE teachers, Safe School training for our administrators hosted by our Department of Public, hosted by our Guam Police Department, the Next Generation Science Standards for science teachers, the ASCA for our counselors, literacy and makerspace for our librarians, and of course, math instruction that was facilitated by our REL Pacific. So these are ongoing supports that we believe need to be given to our teachers as we also expect to see academic achievement. We also had completed 6 major proposals that we are ready to, that is under review, but have been submitted to our internal federal program for review and feedback. The 6 proposals that we are going to be submitting to USDOE are Intervention and Enrichment Project, School Improvement Plan Project, Professional Development, which embraces coaching and mentoring, Chamorro Studies Project, College and Career Readiness Project, and School Climate Culture and Engagement through multi-tier systems of support. The question that was asked earlier on the status with double session, we have kept our students at the center, at the heart of the decisions. And as GDOE continues in the deliberation, we are certain and are ready to say that we will lift the double session for next school year. This means full instruction for our children. They have been in double session for quite some time, and rightly so, we need to give them the instructional time that they are deserving. This hopefully will address those concerns that our community, our stakeholders, our families, but most importantly, our students, that we will be addressing academic performance, social emotional competencies, and of course their well-being. Lifting the double session will also hopefully reduce the chronic absenteeism, improve attendance, and providing that healthy learning environment that they are deserving. Open the opportunity for enrichment, after-school program, clubs, and even sports competition. We are about promoting positive conditions for learning, and the learning environment that Senator Borja had mentioned is right there in the forefront of our decisions. So with this, ongoing conversations with our school leaders that impacts double session, the lifting of double session continues. The moving parts are many, but we are coming to a very close timeline in saying it is already moving towards that change. Of course, facilities is one that we're paying attention. Transportation, which we hope to have that conversation this week with DPW, and other related factors that will really make sure will give us that opportunity to open our doors for all our kids. We hope to announce the final plan in a couple of weeks, either end of March, early April. But rest assured, the principals in these schools are already having serious conversations on how we're going to address this. Thank you.
Happy day, Mr. Speaker, Vice Speaker, Honorable Borja, Senator Borja, all the other senators. My name is Franklin Leon Guerrero. I'm the Deputy Superintendent for Finance and Services. So, first slide that I'll be covering right now is food and nutrition. What this is a financial management review. It's underway. If the planning is already completed, the execution will be in the next week approximately. It's more or less underway. The individuals performing the review, we're going to come to Guam, but cost constraints and stuff, they're going to do it virtually. So they've sent a bunch of Zoom meeting inquiries to get ready. For the past review, the past audit, if you will, there were no cost-related findings whatsoever. The duration of the review is 3 months. And what we're looking at here is this is the meal reimbursements, Sodexo, all the meals, breakfast, lunch, to schools, adult daycare, child daycare. The total allotment is $22 million. 17.6 million is federal share, and we have a 20%, so our share is 4.4 million. Although the review is imminent, we don't anticipate any issues or any problems. Next page. So financial overview. Our total budget authority is $265.8 million. We've expended to date $119.5 million. We've encumbered $12.9 million. So encumbered, what I mean by that is we have POs or contracts which we've been entered into, but they have not been invoiced yet. So once they're invoiced, that $12.9 million will be expended. We have a remaining balance of approximately $133,324,000. So which is we're burning at about 49.84%, and we're approximately at 50% of the school year gone by. So the burn rate is appropriate. We're watching it closely to make sure. As you know, we're going through the FY25 audit with Ernst & Young. I can tell you that the public auditor got our attention to tell us how important DOE is to be on time. The rest of the line agencies line up behind DOE, and if we're slow to perform, it affects the entire audit process. So I'm here to tell you that since Ernst & Young opened the portal to put fiscal inquiries in to ask for financial documents and things like that during the audit process, 26 inquiries have come in. 26 inquiries have been responded to on time or ahead of schedule. The fact of the matter is we are waiting for Ernst & Young to provide the Gantt chart that's so vitally needed to identify the milestones and proceeding on with the rest of the audit. The foundational information that they require to proceed with their audit has been given on time or ahead of time. And it's not listed on the chart, but I just wanted to tell you, when we first came in, our first hearing, I mentioned to you that the payables, the aging accounts, the accounts payable, from December to January, there was an 89% reduction in the payables. And I wanted to tell you that a month later now for February, did we maintain that pace? Did we reduce the pace? Where are we at? Did we lose focus? The answer is no, we didn't lose focus. If you look at the aging accounts payable for February, the end of February, compare it to the same measurement tool, which was December 31st. January, we cleared 89% of the payables. In February, comparison to December, we cleared 97% of the payables. So we are on track, we're on scope, we're taking care of business the way it should be. Next page. So the federal grants now, we kind of broke this up into two areas. Federal grant education awards and ARP, which is the big one. So we have 169.8 million in federal grants. We have remaining balance of 100.8 million. And we have instituted monthly meetings with the grant holders, federal grant holders. Every month we sit down and we break bread and we ask them, what are you doing to contract the services and the merchandise or whatever it might be for your grant to stay in line with the grant requirements, meet the requirements, bill it, invoice it, and get it paid within the time frame of the grant. So we are actually having monthly meetings now to ensure what's your progress. That wasn't happening before, and then towards the end of the grant viability, the end of the grant period, everybody was jumping through hoops to try to spend money that they should have been paying attention to earlier on. So this is a provision that we put in place to ensure that there's a methodical and logical process to managing the grants. And the big grant, of course, is the ARP grant. This is the one that was funding the refurbishment of the 12 schools. It was for $286.9 million. I can tell you today that 90% of that grant is liquidated. I can also tell you today that that grant expires on March 31st, this month. We're very aware of that. We are having important, vital meetings to ensure that we expend on the projects that ARP was designed for every penny that we can. I will tell you that there has been some variables that we've had to manage that was introduced earlier. For example, President Trump came in and he caused he caused a strategic pause. And that strategic pause had consequences everywhere. But on Guam, the consequences were when they stopped the federal flow of money, including ARP money, then my predecessor and the superintendent before us stopped contracts that were being funded by that ARP money. Stopped, because we do not know if President Trump is going to continue the money flow. And those stops, for the period of time that it was, caused contractors to have demobilization costs, remobilization costs. Some of their supplies that they were buying from the states, transportation costs went up. The cost of the supply itself went up. They're asking for purchase order changes to upgrade that. We can no longer do that because the time for the active period of time that you can commit on a grant expired. So the time expired. So even though everybody was working in good faith, so to speak, time got a hold of us, and now you can't modify it because of the time constraints of the grant. So everything that can be done is being done. We're talking to legal, we're talking to auditors. We will have a better explanation for the final 10% when the dust settles after March 31st. Thank you.
So the last 3 slides will be basically our approach moving forward. And we have successfully navigated contractual challenges that we had stated earlier, and what DFAS also has stated, to be able to continue to complete these projects with our 12 schools and with FB Leon Guerra Middle School. But to do all of these, because then although he didn't say it, that yes, we will exhaust our ARP monies, but we've incurred other costs as a result of the pause. And therefore, it would mean now that we would have to look at local funds to be able to make those payments for those invoices. So we are requesting legislative assistance to amend the law to allow for the utilization of GDOE funding lapses for continuous infrastructure renovation and deferred maintenance to comply to ADA and public health rules and regulations, capital improvement projects, collateral instructional equipment, and other spending priorities identified by the board. There's also a request, because in the federal government, they have increased the threshold for simplified acquisition, and I know you've increased it from $25,000 to $250,000, and the federal side is up to $350,000. But we are requesting, because as large as our department is, and with all these big CIP projects, rarely do we have, small dollar amounts under even $350. So the request is to increase it to $500,000. We are going to continue to maintain fiscal accountability and transparency. And as indicated earlier, is that we do understand some of the requirements in the use of federal dollars, that we must have a maintenance of effort. So it was requested by the SPED division that if they were to purchase 4 additional buses, our maintenance of effort would be to provide 2. All purchase orders also are now required to email all their invoices to one business office desk. It's no longer to individual divisions or programs where they can get lost. Is that it must all go to one office, and hence then is that the retrieval of those invoices and payments, timely payments, will be made. We've also instituted a standard operating procedure revision to prevent any over or underspending and timely drawdowns. And that's where we're seeing that there are going to be interest payments that has to be made should then the drawdowns are not made timely. DFAS has also now required a performance-based evaluation criteria to increase accountability and workload output. He's also instituted a master tracking system, which is about 85% completed, and this will be for the timeliness of meeting procurement and contractual requirements. Milestone requirements will be met in a timely and efficient manner, especially for audits and any other reports that we have to submit to you and to the governor's office. Continuing to move forward is that professional assessment of individualized education plans, known more as IEPs, to ensure appropriate services are provided to eligible students. So some of this is, like I said earlier, with the tracking system, is that we'll be able to track any of these professional services or contracts as to when they would expire, or when at any time that there should be a need to renew within a year or 2 years, so we don't run into that problem of missing a timeline. We're also addressing staffing shortages, and one of the things that we decided to do in order to address the 138 school aides, 1-to-1 that we need for our children based on their IEPs, is to be able to cross-train all of our aides. So we're only able to do the first half of them during the spring break, and we'll do the other half as well in the summer. We're committed to increasing student learning by increasing academic performance, by strengthening college and career pathways, and to continuously provide professional development for faculty and staff. DOE, by the way, this is a news that hasn't been announced, but I want you to know that DOE is currently accredited by the following: the district and schools by COGNIA, which is a Northern Central Association Commission on Accreditation and School Improvement, by the Northwest Accreditation Commission, and the Southern Association of Colleges and School Colleges on Accreditation and School Improvement. Secondly, we're also accredited by the Western Association of Schools and Colleges, known more as WASC. So we are the first public school on island to be accredited by 2 accrediting institutions. There is one private school, which happens to be St. Anthony. There's also WASC and COGNIA accredited, and all of our DODEA schools are accredited by COGNIA. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and if you have any questions. Did I forget one? Yeah. I'm so sorry. How come I'm terribly sorry. Yes, since we've started, is that every day we would find some problems, and one of the best ways in order to tackle these problems is that we have set up certain strategic task forces within the department. And to mention a few, is that we were concerned about our classrooms and school coverages, because one of the most important things that we said we wanted to do is to focus on student learning and making sure that the children are not going to be losing that when there are high numbers of absences and not having anyone to cover those classes. We do have a group, like I said earlier, with double session. We're continuing with the same task force with the decommissioning of schools, school readiness, which meets every Tuesday, school safety and security, school grounds maintenance, facilities and maintenance, district accreditation. This is fairly new for WASC because normally it's the schools that you accredit, but now we're not looking only at schools, but rather the district, and everyone is being held accountable. We're also addressing the one-to-one laptop program. I know many years ago you've heard an audit that was conducted in which so many laptops were purchased, and now we're working to determine how those can be used, how they're going to be distributed, and more importantly, we're working with the governor's broadband task force to also make sure that the areas are where these children are at, that they would have access to the broadband. Early childhood is another critical area as well that we're looking at because of 3 different programs, and that makes it harder, of course, for the department, especially when we're finding that the numbers are lower for our Head Start program because they're competing with the universal pre-K and the GATE pre-K, and now the numbers are so low and are spread, thinly. Teacher recruitment is definitely high on our list, and of course the retention of our teachers. We have several programs that we're trying to work with not only the certification office, but we're working even with the Department of Labor because of an apprenticeship teacher program that they have. So we're looking at many different ways to reach out to people in our community, those who want to change their careers. I don't know if you heard this, some time ago there was this program called Boots to the Classroom. These are a lot of military veterans who've returned and want to have a change in their career. So we're looking at various people in the community, and especially now with some businesses closing down, that there might be a lot of individuals out there seeking other employment. We're looking at the school leadership evaluation as well. Artificial intelligence district policy, that's a big and popular issue, and we need to make sure that we stay on top of it. And of course, one of the biggest areas as well is excess annual leave and how it is to be addressed and to make sure that we're in compliance with the law. Once again, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Wampet. To start with the transition, can you kind of go through the, and the reason I'm going to ask this question is, obviously over the last couple of months, in regards to a lot of the outstanding issues that we've been working on with the department prior to you guys' arrival and taking over the administration, a lot of the responses that we've always got is you guys are conducting your assessment to get a feel of what's going, what issues are. I guess my question, because when I asked the other or the outgoing, just to make sure that our facts are still the same, is how is the transition in regards to the outgoing super deputies in a lot of these issues? Because a lot of these issues that you guys have mentioned as challenges are not new issues, right? It's not issues that just happened because now the old team is gone. What was the transition like in regards to where they were at? How were they addressing like HVAC? That's not a new issue. That has been an issue that they were working through. So what was the conversation around all these issues and challenges that you guys have listed here from the outgoing team? Because all you're saying is that these are challenges and we're moving forward, but how are we going to remedy all these issue challenges?
Well, we set up a transition team, individuals within the department and outside of the department who'll be able to work with the individual deputies and we gave them a list of questions and documents that we would like to have. And for the most part, we received them. It's unfortunate. I hate to have to be the one to say this, but Dr. Joey Heath will tell you that she had nothing. The computer was completely cleared out. She has no idea at all what's happening with facilities and maintenance. She has no idea about the HVACs that were being purchased.
So the
Now,
transition was just you requested for documents? Is that, so was there any
Yes.
meetings in regards to going over all these
yes,
different things, or is it just?
We did set up also, we did have a meeting with them. Unfortunately, of course, it wasn't, I guess, adequate, the number of, amount of time to be able to do that. But I mean, we got one, like I said, one DFAS, a deputy that didn't get anything, and the other who basically sat 3, 4, 5 days. Yes, maybe he'll be best to explain that.
I can give you some more detail on what you're asking. The bottom line up front, I will tell you, if there was a hard decision, the decision wasn't made. You want to know about transition? The transition was either, hey, you should look at this, or no mention at all. I'll give you an example. The 286 compressors, air conditioning compressors sitting in the PD warehouse, that was because of the contract that was let for 2,500 air conditioners. And the winning contractor did not go to all the schools to assess what was the hookup requirements at each of the schools. And thus, along the process, that contractor says, I need more money, because many of the air conditioners would be at your house. You have a split unit. You would take the old split unit down and put a new split unit up. It would probably use the same electrical box and things like that. 1 hour. What this individual did or did not take into account, that some of the air conditioners that were specified and he agreed to were not a plug and play match. It went from split ducted to package units. Now all of a sudden you would have to create 200, 300 feet length of ducting, and you had to insulate the ducting. And this contractor said, whoa, I didn't put that in my bid, so you owe me more money. I'm just telling you my perception of it. And I say, wait a minute, this contract says equipment, air conditioner units, and installation. And installation. You're telling me now that you want more money. In this case, he asked for $9 million more to install 286 units. Put that into perspective. 2,500 units to purchase and install. The original contract, which he bid, was $10 million, including installation. Now he wants to give me a quote for $9 million to install 286 units. I want some of the drugs he's doing, because that's really amazing. So that's a known. But the prior management team said this is hard, and part of the reason it's hard is because they were involved in decision or non-decision processes that led us to where we were. So they dropped the ball on our feet. Now this is ARP money that's paying for this. So ARP money is going to expire. So now we're up against an expiring ARP. We have 286 units that I'm not going to pay $9 million to install when it included installation. So what's the way forward? To do nothing, or to let's get engaged in court or something like that, means $2.7 million of ARP money will expire. So after consultations with our lawyers, after consultations with our auditors, we came to navigate the best way forward. And the best way forward was to pay for the units themselves. We asked the contractor to subtract out what he had included as installation costs, subtract it out, we'll pay for the equipment itself, then we can use the ARP money to pay for the equipment itself, and then we will go out on a competitive bid to bid for the installation of 286 units. That's one instance. Now, what kind of transition do we have? Zero, other than you should look at that. So, and then there's other instances. I mean, we can go into detail after detail, but that should give you an idea.
I have another example. For instance, I place F&M in automated systems, so after analyzing all the data and be able to, and you can go to our website under Assessment and Accountability under F&M dashboard. So if you click, for instance, the Southern High School, I noticed that for the past, I have 10 years of data on that. Southern High has been neglected. They have so many carpentry and plumbing issues, and looking at the dates and when was the last time they did any repair for that school. So I spoke to the F&M supervisor and said, this needs to stop. We need to mobilize the staff to repair Southern High School. So we were able to stop some of the leaks, as well as the auditorium. There's leaks there, that was repaired, and also the HVAC. So it looks promising, and continue to monitor all those things, again, just by looking at the data. So all this, the individuals that do any type of work, they must submit a work order, even if they have to repair a desk. Anything that they do has to be accounted for. So that is a big progress. And if you ask me, when's the last time for instance, the elevator was serviced, it should be there, because there's always a maintenance person accompanying Otis representative. So this is an example of the difference between past and current. Thank you.
I mean, I guess my question then is, I recognize all these problems. They're not new. The question is, because there have been, at least even over the last couple months, I forgot who told me, but in regards to possible legal issues with some of the things that happen. And the reason I have to ask this is because, of course, speaking with the outgoing team, and I even remember at one board meeting where Dr. Nahalawa had asked if we could at least have a transition, and to this day, she says that there was never an official transition. So my question is, with all these challenges, where are we at? And I know when we first met, the first meeting we had, you guys said, we're not going to sit here and point fingers, but it seems now there's all these different issues, and we're, at least from what I'm getting is that you guys were necessarily given some of the information or the context to some of these issues. So was there, on the record, was there an official transition with the outgoing team? Was it because you guys, there was no attempt on their part, or that's the question?
I can tell you that I met with my predecessor. He had 2 days, 4 hours a day, so 8 hours. There was no mention of these issues. I can give you an example, another example. Cortec, the refurbishment of the 12 schools. We are finding out now that 18 to potentially $30 million in invoices have not been submitted by Cortec yet for work that was approved by the previous management team. It's just coming to light now. So we don't have that money. ARP does not have that money. So that's money that we have to figure out where that's going to come from. So now you have to ask the viability of what was done. You have to reconstruct what was done. In the refurbishment contract, it had for the roofs to be repaired. The roofs were leaking. But DOE, in its statement of work, identified the number of square feet per building roof that needed to be repaired. When the contractor got up there and started working on it, he discovered that the SOW specification was way low. The roof leaks were greatly expanded. So the contractor stopped and it said, do you want me just to do what you identified and not do the rest? That doesn't make a lot of sense because it'll be raining in on the other half of the roof and not here. So DOE said, no, we need you to do the entire roof. So they did a lot of investigation on their part. They documented it. There was a lot more square footage that's involved. That kind of adjustment, and let's say, for example, DOE in the specification said this restroom needs 3 toilets replaced. The contractor went there and there were 7 toilets there. Said, do you want me to only replace 3 or do you want all 7 replaced? We want all 7 replaced. Okay, that'll be that'll be an additional cost. So weeks ago, this contractor came in with $10.4 million in additional costs for roofs leaking, toilets, things like that. Was it good work? Yes. Was it needed work? Yes. Did it follow the contractual procurement process? No. Did somebody in authority in DOE say go forth? Yes. So services were rendered, parts were provided, this individual's going to be paid. Where's the money going to come from? It's not ARP money, it has to come from somewhere. It wasn't budgeted. So that's a challenge. There's challenges that are facing us now that we were not briefed on, we did not know it was aware. Unfortunately, it could have been mitigated somewhat if action would have been taken sooner.
So you said 2 days, you had a 2-day transition? Did you say that with the DFAS, the outgoing DFAS?
I had 2 days, 4 hours each day.
Was that because they didn't give you the opportunity prior to that, or when did you reach out? When were you notified that you were going to take this job?
I was reached, when was I notified?
Yeah. You're saying you only had 2 days. So
Yeah,
was that
well,
because
I called my predecessor, he didn't call me, and he said he could squeeze some time out for me. So there was no formal process put in place that I was aware of. I reached out. I could only, I can't impose myself. He's still the person in charge. So when he had availability, I made myself available, and that's how it went. Unfortunately, he was busy. He didn't have anything written down. He didn't have any agenda. He just sat me down and said, kind of look this way, look that way. That was about it.
So we're not going into, I don't want to stay long on this question, but just because, again, the reason I'm asking this question is, again, there have been a lot of claims coming out of the department in regards to possible legal action because of some things that we failed to because we didn't conduct a proper transition, which is what is being claimed. Nobody knows because the claim is there wasn't a proper transition. So Dr. Wampat, if we could just finish this question in regards to whether there was a proper transition, and was it because on their part, or was it because...
I'm going to have every one of the deputies describe what that transition was. My transition with the superintendent was 2 afternoons, a couple of hours. So a total maybe of 4 hours. You've heard what his was like. I'd like the other deputies to explain. In their meetings, their individual meetings, we had a meet and greet. They all took off and went to see their offices, and then they were scheduling their transition time, aside from the documents that we received and were reading. So I'll ask everyone to state that.
Yeah, I can go ahead. So we actually signed our contract on December 29, stating that we're to start January 1st. Right after that, we did a transition meeting with the former deputies. Prior to that, we were able to collect data and documents through the transition team for about almost, I believe, a month or a couple of weeks. We reviewed the data, we did a survey, we conducted survey, and all those things. So usually, I also transitioned from my last employment. In my transition, I have lists of things that I made aware of to the incoming personnel or superintendent or deputy superintendent. In that list, I specify what are those grants that I am handling, how much is that, when is the date, what are those contracts, etc., and all the details, including personnel who are in charge of this and that. When I came in and did a transition meeting for 1 full day with that person who exited, I was informed there is no issue. Textbook allocation is not being done by the government for many, many years. Just reach out to several project heads there, no problem. So, I took that words, and during my 2 months of being there, regarding the textbooks, I received a textbook audit draft, which shows something different than what I received. So There were POs that were not paid for years, and those federal grants lapses and can no longer be liquidated. There are teachers' positions that were project leads, and there are school aides. We have 655 school aides that we can utilize. There are invoices that just came to me that was since April 2025, January 2025, that is just now came to my desk for my signature so it can be processed. These issues are really mostly administrative and procedural that if we follow. Oh, another one is expired contracts. But we continue to provide services despite expired contracts. So these are really administrative procedural issues that if we follow regulation, board policies, may probably be prevented. But I was told there's no issues. Everything is great. Thank you.
So for my experience, it's the so-called transition is during the meet and greet, and that's just about an hour or so. And I was shown where the office was, and that's about it. What I received is documents for the organizational chart, functional chart, and some PowerPoint presentations developed by the various departments that I will be overseeing. And when I came my first day of work, January 5th, I came to an office totally empty, to include the desk, not even a pen. There is no administrative officer. She was gone. All her belongings was gone. So literally, I came into an empty space, not even a pen. And the chair wasn't there, so I'm like standing around in the hallway trying to determine where are all her belongings. So I asked for the laptop that was utilized, and that too was nothing in there, not even a Word document. When I left to GCC, everything and all my work stays in that computer, so whoever comes in, whatever I worked on, they're all there, made available to whoever will be taking place. That did not happen to me. So in essence, I was going around trying to find out when is the construction meetings are held, when, what. It would have been great to say, here are some of the lookout, here's the updates, here's some pending areas, none of that. So when you ask how is the transition, like I said, the transition was just documentation and that hour and a half. Thank you.
I want to share with all of you that at least for me, I still have access to my predecessor. I can reach out to her, ask her questions, consult her if I have questions. She brought me to the space where I was going to occupy, and I found documents that she left behind for me to read, some SOPs that I had to acquaint myself with. And I know that, it must have been very hard for my predecessor as well. So I gave her at least, that respect, that human part of understanding, leaving the main office. Her response in all the times that I would need some answers, she's pretty much receptive and immediate. Though I did experience one, and I'm not too sure whether it's really on the predecessor because I was looking at all the the trail and the information that I got from the team is a training that was conducted March of 2025, and there was no purchase order or any contract. And now we're trying to figure out how to address that, which funding source. So that in itself tells me something, right? Again, some of the deputies have shared, policies, procedures. We really need to make sure that we are following this together, abiding by that, and making sure that we understand the process. The other support that I got is really the people that are still in the main office. So I turned to them and I asked them, so what do you normally do? When do these meetings happen? Can I have this kind of information? And they're readily there. Of course, I've seen already some areas that we do need to improve. There's also the need for clarity in the roles and responsibilities. Timelines, these meetings and the next steps to follow, and maybe even review some of the SOPs and maybe even policies. Our practices, our programs, our policies need to be revisited. So those are the things that I'm seeing. And as you had mentioned, Senator Borja, the public deserves to know. And it's all about, trying to be transparent, accountable, and responsible stewards of our time and our work that we are providing for our students and our schools, our teachers. And that's the approach that I look at. Again, my experience have been, I look at the challenge as opportunities, and I open it as a way for me to improve and, being better. Better in the way of serving our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Leon Guerrero, the 51 million, there's been a lot of interpretation and I don't know if it's misinterpretation, but there's been a lot of back and forth in regards to the reimbursement for the ARP. What was the last thing that Mr. Wade said? Because the last thing that we were briefed here at the legislature before Dr. Swanson left was the reimbursement was sent, the approval, we were waiting on approval from USAID on whether or not we were going to get that reimbursement. It got approved, the money was on its way, it should have been in the bank by the time Dr. Swanson left. Now, at least what I'm being told from secondhand sources is that now you guys are scared to touch the 51 million because there's some clarification from DOI or USAID. What has changed from Dr. Swanson leaving money in the bank to today?
Well, Franklin, you want to address?
Half a day, Senator. Frank Kuperners. I'm GDOE's Chief Internal Auditor. Relative to the 51 million, the idea is that GDOE was working directly with the programmatic office to seek approval. That approval was given, but it did come with some caution. Well, the approval was given. On the management side, we were going through the late audit of FY24. Through my team and through E&Y, this matter was flagged. There was some concerns surrounding the calculation and earmarking requirements, and then also the supporting documentation specifically to justify the 51 million transfer back to local teacher payroll. So to make a long story short, as you kind of alluded to, is that the prior superintendent, before he left, said that they got the approval and before he left, the money will be there. That did occur. They went through the process of getting that reimbursement. The reimbursement was processed. That funds is currently sitting with GDOE, but the audit was issued subsequently. The audit did question not 51 million, but it questioned almost $1 million, about $800,000 of what they tested for meeting the two requirements that they were kind of forewarned about, the earmarking requirement, If you just take 20% off the top of the total award, it's kind of similar to the maintenance effort. The amount wasn't met. And then in the testing of the auditors, I believe it was somewhere close to 90, I want to say over 95%. I have to go back to revisit the numbers, but significant amount of deficiencies in total sample, to the point where they question, and auditors can only question costs what they've tested. They question nearly 95 to 90 higher percentage being deficient of supporting documents to justify learning loss. So that audit has now been filed, and with the single audit, the requirement is those audit gets filed in the federal clearinghouse, similar to this process, and it's reviewed by Congress before other federal awards are provided. So we're going through the process because now that it is at risk, we do have the funds. The funds have been identified in an audit as at risk with some question costs. I think there's a conservative approach by the new team that before we continue or move in the area of spending those funds, to seek a final program determination letter from USAID so that there is no repayment or risk of returning or any other federal infractions of reduced funding relative to USAID's funds. So that's where we're at. The money has been drawn. It's sitting with GDOE. The audit has been issued. It came with question costs and deficiencies. The audit is filed with the Federal Clearinghouse. It's been provided to USAID. We're working with their equivalent team to clear audit findings and give us the green light so that none of those funds at risk of repayment, because a risk of repayment will mean we have to come back down here and ask for additional support to recover the $51 million if we spend it. So I think that's the approach that, and Judy can confirm if that's the approach that she's going with. I just do know that we were contacted to work and expedite our process with trying to resolve and get this program determination letter in from USAID.
Do we have a kind of estimate on when we should hear from them, or how long has it been since we've sent that in?
So we've been following up every week. I know that this week we are reaching out to our high-risk consultants to get into their contacts with USAID and try to get us a face-to-face or at least a Zoom call to get some type of action and urgency on the matter. We're hoping that we get something by this week.
Thank you. Mr. Leonger, how much more of the ARP funding do we have left? I know it's about $30 million left that we need to spend by the end of this month to meet the deadline.
Yeah, we have 10% of the total allotment left, and we have contracts. This is the refurbishment of the 12 schools. But for some unknown reason to me, other than the strategic pauses caused the contractor to delay. So the contractor came back, and when they started back up and they said, well, now I need remobilization costs, things like that. All of the invoice, they're doing the canopies, by the way. So what the contractor's doing, we're 90% done. They're just doing the rain canopies between the buildings and we'll be all said and done. But unfortunately, the invoices or unknown invoices are coming out of the woodworks right now. But because of the timelines of the grant, even though it was on the refurbishment contract, because of the timelines of the grant, we cannot take those invoices and apply it to the grant because the grant won't allow that. So that has to go into local funding, which we don't have the local funding right now. Approximately 18 to 30 million, we're asking that contractor to give us every day. We're asking for the invoices. Now, one other thing that the contractor is talking about is some of the invoices were submitted but squirreled away. Now, we worked on that because we have a new solution to that. But the invoices that were squirreled away and have come to light, the contractor says, you owe me interest, late payment fees and stuff. So the accumulation of late payment fees is $900,000 plus. That's not budgeted anywhere. So and this won't be covered by ARP money. We are trying to expend the ARP money, approximately 30. We're 90% expended. We'll know in the next month how the dust settles, but we're doing our absolute best to spend every penny that we can on the project that it was designed for.
Minus the ARP, how much money in lapse funding do you have in the bank right now? minus the ARP money that was set aside for revolving?
We have about 15 million, 16 million, but that's the prior year lapses. So now
Did you
we're
say
back
60 million, 60?
16.
16? And that's what you're using right now to revolve, to pay for the ARP, correct? 'Cause
Yeah, Senator, if I can just add, so as we get caught up, and you're aware of our persistent delays with our audit, we just wrapped up our FY24, and we really should be at a point where we're issuing FY25, and that was what Frank was speaking to earlier, that he's trying to get a handle of and get that out timely. But from the FY24, what the audit report shows is a total of $77 million in surplus. 77. Of that, 26 million is an operational surplus from unspent local, and 51 million represents the ARP transfer to local teacher payroll. So if you take that, that's 77, the 51 is the transfer, the 26 is your local surplus. As we close fiscal year 25, and I can't speak to the precision of those numbers, but I can tell you about tracking it from an expenditure level, which is one thing that the legislature requires, is your quarterly expenditure reports to be filed. Where we were tracking on the end of the fiscal year was $20 million surplus and $10 million in open encumbrances. We're hoping, and we're working with Frank, to make sure that all the FY25 expenditures do not carry forward. None of those prior year obligations should make it to 26. So you want to use that $24 million is a lapse. The way the law was created, GDOE has lapse provisions that carry forward into operations for 25. The 25 law says that your lapses, again, thinking cumulative lapses, 24 and 25 lapses, rolling into operational year 26, is earmarked to meet ARP and prioritization of playgrounds and sports facilities. That said, you're looking at a significant balance that has an accumulated lapse carry forward that you want to, and ARP, for all intents purposes, comes to an end this month. How much of that money do we actually have tied up ready to go that's going to be useful in 26 for sports facilities and playgrounds? So I think our superintendent asked in the presentation that we have some type of amendments to the language of that law so that we can take some of this lapsed funds and make sure it gets dedicated to support these critical contracts that the new management team is kind of uncovering as they go through their first few months.
Thank you. One more question, and then I'll open up to my colleagues for questions. You know, I was at a school a couple weeks ago. There was a room full of students with disabilities and 2 one-on-one because of the shortage. I guess my question for the parents and a lot of these is, what is the plan? There has to be some kind of immediate, I think for me, like just standing there and watching them, I stood around for a couple minutes, the kids came and hugged my leg, the one-on-one aides look like they're on their last straw and ready to quit. But what is the plan? Because at least talking to other principals across the department, it's not the only school that has this issue. I mean, this is an issue obviously that has existed even prior to your arrival, Dr. Wanpat. What is the plan? Like, what is the timeline to where there's gonna be some kind of relief to, I mean, the staff is burnt out, not just these one-on-one aides. It trickles to the counselors, to the it's all hands on deck. And I'm sure you guys have seen this and you know this. But what can we tell the community and the stakeholders and the parents and the students as to what is your plan? I know you're saying we're going to hire, but in the interim, that's the same thing the previous administration said. What are we going to do?
You're right. It's a perennial problem. We just don't have enough applicants. And then we have a very high turnover rate as well. And then the department has even tried to reclassify some of these positions in the hopes of changing the titles and slightly increasing the salaries, that maybe more of them would apply, but they're not applying. That's the problem we're having right now. But it doesn't mean that we're going to stop. So that's why we looked at the total number of our school aides that we have. And what we want to do is to cross-train these aides. So we have regular aides that are not part of CBAs. Then we have the CBAs. Those are the collective bargaining agreement aides. And then we have those for SPED, for the one-to-one aides. So we have different types of adult support in the school system in the name of teacher assistants, developmental disability aides, school aid 1, 2, 3, a whole slew of them. But the problem is that we're losing them as fast as we are receiving them. So we know that we need to address especially our one-to-one aides. And we had a meeting with our principals and with SPED. And one of the things that we decided to do, which is going to happen in spring break, is to be able then to train those school aides, our regular aides, our CBA aides, to be able then to also learn how to handle children with disabilities. So should then any one of them be absent, another school aide will be able to cover. But it doesn't end there. One of the things already in a conversation we're having is with public health. And we're looking at some of these individuals that are required now by the federal government, those who are on SNAP, that they must provide so many hours to volunteer at a workplace or be hired. We're even willing to hire some of these individuals, so many of them, by breaking up how many percentage of time they can be in the school. So we're having that conversation with them to be able to identify them. I said we'll hire them by the places where they live, where the schools are at, and then those who want to volunteer so we can have their presence as well and even train them. So we're willing to hire them. We just need the applicants. And then the last thing, of course, especially, I do know that this was a big thing with Tiny Eye, is that yes, we have right now currently, and it's allowed, that those who have insurance, that if they went and sought an occupational therapist, speech therapist, or physical therapist, which is it's part of their insurance, we will pay that share of their co-payment. The third, and this is where now I called the governor's office last week, because asking now that I want to do an emergency procurement so that we can go out and then put out a procurement with Tiny Eye. We had a 2-hour meeting with them last Thursday to find out what has happened, why was there a pause, what can we do to address this. So it's not, I mean, I know it's not as fast as we all would like it to be, but there's just limitations, of course, in terms of either the law or processes to make this happen.
So if you're saying there's some, maybe some barriers in the law, what in the law do we need to change to address this? I mean, I think it's at a point now, I think for me, when I look at that, like I would consider that a state of emergency.
Well,
and that's small compared to, I'm sure, the broader problems across the department.
And that's why we're going that route of an emergency, because one is that this contract is not something below $500,000 so that it won't hit, I'm sorry to say this, the Attorney General's office, because it becomes an emergency, and right now it's over $600,000. That's what we're looking at. So our legal counsel and our procurement officer are writing up now the RFP to be able to procure those services with Tiny Eye.
I'd just like to add, and it came from the parents and the teachers on this Tiny Eye, occupational therapy, speech therapy and all that, that it takes time, as the parents said, it takes time for the student, the special needs student, to build a relationship with the therapist. That takes time. If we were to switch companies, switch therapists in mainstream right now, the rest of the year we might have a new company, but they would never get any learning because they're now trying to build a new relationship. They wouldn't get to the learning phase. So the company that we're going out for emergency procurement isn't being done lightly, but the value added that they can hit the track, the existing relationships are intact. Not only can we finish this year, we're going to go back and get the classes for the classes that were missed, so that we can say that they'll get the full amount of training that they would have had there not been this lapse with the therapists that they have that relationship with. So it makes sense, and having done that, we're now going to go into the long-term solution for, instead of this emergency declaration. But for the needs of the kids, the needs of the parents, the needs of the students, this makes a lot of sense right now.
So, Senator, we're looking at many different options. One is we also contacted the Department of Labor to see what we could do to be able to bring in some of these professionals, the EB3s, especially with occupational therapy. We reached out to Allied Health to find out how many of them are licensed here in Guam. We reached out to retirees as well, and that's something we're working with HR to try to bring them in and to bring them in at an above step, which we need, of course, basically the consent of the board. And then the other is that we were thinking that we want to also procure services, contractual services, where we'll be able to pay them by the hour and the number of children that they're servicing. And then also we looked at the price in which the hospitals are paying, how much the clinics are paying. So we're even thinking of paying above what those other medical institutions, health institutions are paying, just so we can attract them to us. So those are all the different things we were trying to, to avail ourselves with to be able then to attract these professional therapists.
Thank you. Now we'll open up the panel for questions. Senator San Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just listening to everything being said, I have a list of items here to ask, but I'm just going to try to keep it simple. Madam Superintendent, on page 4 in your slides, SPED staffing shortages include, I'm going to base my questions on the slides, okay? So whoever's area it covers, feel free to speak. List down all the positions. Do you have funding for all of these positions? Occupational therapist, assistant? Because when you put on the slide, you said occupational therapist, assistant. I'm going to believe it's 1 when I heard somebody say 5 earlier. Okay, when I look at the slides, when you put it out on the slide, I just want to make sure that we all understand each other. Don't just put out the position and then assume that we're going to catch it when you say it, when you should have had it on the slide. Occupational therapist assistant, 2, 3, 4, whatever number. Okay, I heard earlier it was 5. Okay, and then as I go down the list, my main question is, do you have the funding to hire these people? And if you don't,
Yes.
you do have the funding.
Yes, there are fundings. We just don't have the applicants.
Okay, and how long ago has been going? Based on your finding as a new deputy superintendent, how long has this been going on?
So there are some positions there that have been there in the job vacancy announcement for quite some time already, but
several years, right? Several years, more than 2, maybe probably 3, maybe as long as maybe 5. I see Dr. Carter in the back smiling because he knows where I'm coming from with this. A lot of these positions I know in DOE, these are specialty positions. Exactly what your superintendent mentioned, is finding a way to reach out and doing what the federal government is doing. The federal government, if they need new officers, what they do? Raise the salary, take it from custom, from GPD. DOE is going to try to do that with the other agencies. Be very careful how you do that, Madam Super. I know what you're trying to take care of DOE. I understand that, but just be careful. And going down the area with school aides, I heard it was mentioned you're going to cross-train all the school aides. Because I know for a fact a lot of your school aides that are one-to-one, they go through this process every year, having to apply. And I've mentioned this in the past. Why not just identify school aid as in school aid, and then they can be the school aid one-to-one, for the next 6 hours, and after that they become the regular school aid. So that you're not worrying about every year trying to hire a school aid for one-to-one. And you have somebody throughout the year that can do.
That's exactly what we're doing, and we're not even based on how we're going to write like the IEPs in which these individuals, children who need these, what we're going to call adult support. So then you're right, so that at certain times of the day, maybe if the IEP says that they're needed only for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, then they're able to go out and assist with other duties as well, like you said, with the regular school aid. And then when they need to go back into the classroom or to move the children to take them from
I
room to
understand where you're
room.
coming from, Madam Superintendent, when you're talking about the IEP. I'm talking about the employment. The position, like for example, if I was gonna apply for school aid, I should be able to cover all the different types of school aids role that's needed. That's what I'm getting at. And that's what maybe you need to change in the job description so that the folks that do this every year, I meet with a lot of them and they say, Senator, every year I have to go and get now all my clearances and apply for the same position. They should have been in school aid already throughout the year and kept there because you're going to need them. You may not, you needed them in FB Long Ground. You may need them down in Marcel Elementary. They could move around, but have the flexibility. Going down the line, emergency procurement of Tiny Eye underweight the research services. I wrote down who has the RFP. And you mentioned that you're trying to get with the governor's office to allow the emergency rate. But then again, you mentioned, I'm looking at all the slides, okay, because I wrote a bunch of notes. You identified it on slide number 17, increase simplified acquisition threshold from 250K to 500K. But already you've identified that one is at 600K. So you may want to, when you want to send a message to the chair and saying you want to adjust the acquisition, use that position as one position that, no, it's not 500K, you need it. You need it maybe at 6, 7, so that, and we are able to identify the bill that is for specialty positions. You know what I mean? It's not in general. Not that you can just get a contract out there for $500,000 or whatever. It's got to be very specific because I don't think this body's going to give you a green light to avoid the AG's office first.
I mean, we appreciate that. We were at first going to say 350 because the federal just raised it to 350. But we saw in many of our RFPs and our POs that it really exceeds, even that dollar amount. So, and that's why we said 500 as something for you to kind of mull over and decide whether it's something that's doable and you're willing to do. So,
but see, Madam
I didn't ask for the sky.
But the Tiny Eye is already at 600. So 500 ain't going to help you, okay? And all I'm saying is that when you ask to raise the threshold, be specific. You're raising it for this reason, for the special needs, and nothing more. And then the threshold for 500 and below would be for other purposes. And then it'll be easier for the body to say, okay, let's work with it. Like Senator Barnett probably say, no, hold on now. Okay? Moving along, I'm trying not to ask all the questions, Mr. Chair. Perimeter award. You identified that on page 9, sanitation and school safety, campus perimeter fencing awarded, mold mitigation awarded, and then you mention remediation awarded, and then you say it's handled by GSA. So it's not awarded yet then, right? If it's awarded, then it's ongoing, correct? I mean, I'm just trying to understand.
Yes.
Award means, do it.
Well, yes, GSA awarded. What they told us is they awarded it to specific companies. They even gave us the names of the companies.
So it's ongoing. It's happening.
For both of them. The only thing that Dr. Ulloa mentioned was the mold mitigation versus mold, what's the word you were giving?
For the fencing, it is awarded to Wang Brothers.
Got it?
Yes. The mode is Pacific Restoration LLC.
And
The problem is that the original need, the original requirement is identification of mold and remediation of mold. So GSA has DOE money, GSA is bidding this contract out, and GSA said that it kept getting protested. The identification and the remediation in one package kept getting protested. Stop, stop, stop. So they decided, GSA, without talking to DOE, decided to pull out the mitigation and just bid identification. And that's where we are, and we're not sure we're comfortable with that because you're going to spend a lot of money identifying that you have mold. We already know we have mold. So, but there's not going to be any activity to remediate the mold. So we're thinking, why are we doing this? We need to talk to GSA.
Okay, now I understand where you come from. On page or slide number 8, infrastructure improvement. This is all covered by Cortec? Okay. And it says, I guess when you put 95% completion, and then you got on the right side.
The 95 is the cumulative average.
Okay. I'm just.
But to the right, it tells you specific timelines, I mean percentage.
I just wanted to make sure. I do the math often, so I pretty much know. And Frank over there's laughing. Okay, that's Cortec, and that's the one you're discussing about the fluctuation of the cost. Am I correct, Frank?
That's correct. That's where these invoices now, there was okays along the path. This needed adjusting, that needed adjusting, strategic pauses, but nothing was ever said about invoices until they start coming out now. The ability to charge it against the grant is gone. So all of those invoices, $18 to $30 million are coming out of the woodwork, will have to be local funding, which we don't have right now.
Okay, slide number 10. Because I'm from Jigo, FB Leon renovation project. It says 89.44% completion, March 15. What's today? March 5th? No. Okay. It should be 9. Well, today's the 9th, right? So completion, March 5th. Am I missing something? Somebody can correct the slide and change the date. When is it?
It's 89% as of March 5th. Sorry.
How much longer? How much longer for the Jigo people, students, to get back to their school? How much? 89%. How much longer is the construction going to take?
That is just for the funding for the ARP. But like I mentioned before, there are still out-of-scope work that needs to be done, which is the gymnasium, the ANSO or fire suppressant, the fire alarm, the bell system.
89% is all ARP money. That's it.
That's for, yes, that's the
And how much
renovation project.
How much money is it going to cost to finish it off?
Yes, you have to go to bid. That includes the gym.
How much is it estimated, Nay?
So, if it has to go through AG, you're looking at extended time frame. So,
okay. How much money has been spent? How much is 89.44%? What's that cost? That's ARP money used. What was the original estimate that was supposed to be the cost for the complete FB Leon? And get ready, I'm going to ask you about Simon Sanchez, but go ahead and just find the FBLG.
So for the
Last question.
No more? Okay.
FBLG renovation, the cost of that project, the amount is $6,275,217.26.
Repeat that one more time.
$6,275,217.26.
That was the original estimate for the total cost.
That is the cost of the refurbishment project for FBLG.
And how much was spent? What's 84% of 64? 6 million? About 2 million short? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got many other questions, but save it for another day.
Thanks, Senator San Augustine. Senator Duenas.
Susmasi, Mr. Chair. Welcome to the team, to this oversight, and thank you for being here with us. You know, as I read, and I think this, to put this transition to bed, as I read your presentation today, maybe I should have said challenges/findings. Is that the way you see it, Dr. Wampat? I mean, because what I want to do is I want to get an answer to how we're going to benchmark this going forward.
Yes, and that's why in the beginning we did say challenges, and then of course towards the end will be, you know, some of the things we have accomplished and how we're moving forward to overcome those challenges.
So as you present this today, regardless of how we view the transition, these are the findings, what you found when you came in, and how you're preparing to move forward.
Yes, and of course, we were really trying to be very cautious in terms when we're saying we were navigating ourselves towards cleaning some of these things. And DFAS had mentioned a few. We didn't want to be very specific. There's specific companies and specific, some of the findings, like for example, incomplete invoices or invoices that were somewhere else and not necessarily at the business office, things of that nature. But those are, we just happen to, have stumbled upon them when the vendors are coming and asking why they have not been paid.
So moving forward, I hear mold mitigation, I heard fencing, and it's kind of triggering my my Mawar, financial capabilities and kind of the ping pong ball of the $20 million in funding. Did DOE receive that $20 million back?
So what I did was that before I left the governor's office, that I've spoken to the chief of staff, because I know that out of that 20 million, 6 million of that was used for the removal of debris, and that leaves then 4 million. And these two projects, which is the mold mitigation and fencing, will come from that balance. That is why it was being handled by them and not by us, because we don't have the money in our hands.
So that funding source is still active and available?
Yes, for these two projects.
And who's going to manage it? Has it been moved back to DOE, or are they going to continue to manage it?
They're the ones that put out the RFP and reviewed it and awarded it, and I guess they will be the ones to make the payment as well.
Okay, good. As long as you're not going to become responsible for that, and it's going to funding source remains open.
Yes.
Okay, so my second question then is to Frank and Franklin is, so if we do the legislative adjustments to the Budget Act and others, will you be able to use reimbursement funds for some of these outstanding items that you have to pay for?
Yes, I will continue to stay with what the legislature had wanted it for, which is, yes, for sports facilities and the playground. That is definitely part of our spend plan. But some of the things that we need the money for, like for example, if you look on page 10 for FB, these are right now the top priority for us to be able to use those monies for, so we can get the school ready. But it's going to be primarily for CIPs, collateral equipment. The AG wants us to call it instructional equipment, but there are collateral equipment, all CIP projects.
So with the adjustment to the law, Frank, then those monies become available, so you don't need an additional appropriation if you're able to use those, right?
With the adjustment with the law, it'll remove the restrictions for the specificity and give us the leeway to manage it as the superintendent. Like you said, with the relaxation, then she can use it to get the collateral equipment at FBLG and not tap additional needed revenues for 26. So you're correct. So if the language is amended in such a way that it does set the priority of the original intent of the law, but understanding that the lapses are more significant, that we will still have a executed or a balance remaining that needs to be executed, it can be reprogrammed or, for lack of a better, adjusted so that we can prioritize other critical needs of the department. And one thing would be the FBLG collateral equipment. And even just as a suggestion to further improve the language is just aligning that to critical contracts aligned with the Adequate Education Act, the 14 points. So you already put an internal control to say that your lapses will be your first priority to get your federal reimbursements in order. Get the federal reimbursements 100% funded so you can recover that money. That is a fronting process. Once you recover that money, it becomes part of the additional portion of the money that you can execute, right? So again, understanding that ARP is going to become completed by March, you have this law that kind of manages the rest of the remaining balance in FY26, that we're just asking that if you kind of amend that language, it'll give us more flexibility in having access to the significant lapses that has accumulated over the past 2 fiscal years.
Yeah, I'm going to stick to that. I'm going to work with the chairman because what I'm really the stickler and why we did an additional appropriation, and it turned out to be good for you on the 20 million, was because we weren't in agreement with the fronting for salaries without a reimbursement. And the way we look at it now is we're getting reimbursed on this funding source. It really should go back to its original intention, and that was to help the schools and to pay for all of these projects going forward. So we believe that that's the best way to do it, particularly with the headwinds that we see financially in the coming months, and with a lot of things that are going on. We're going to need to be able to maximize use of those funds.
Yeah, if I could just add that if you allow the amendment to the language, it'll allow GDOE to better manage the financial resources it currently has and not come back to the legislature. Because on one hand, we're going to come down here and say that we need more money in this fiscal year budget to operate, sitting on a surplus, because the surplus has restrictive language. So the better balance is to come down here with the baseline budget that we need to run critical operations and have full access to the money that we already have in our lapses to run towards operations. And that way, there is a better management of all of the government's financial resource when it comes to GDOE managing its lapse revenues and the legislature providing additional supported appropriations.
I appreciate that. Franklin, maybe what we're going to do is set up a meeting between OFB and yourself so that we can and of course our chairman. You know, we've done these meetings before, and it's been very productive in terms of getting things tightened up and how we can make sure that money flows and we don't, you know, use general fund revenues, particularly prospectively, when we know that we got money in the bank, as has been discussed, and you know, can go to those critical projects. You know, I can't believe that we're sitting here and we're having a discussion, but the breaking news, and it's just so exciting, we got to get more information on this, that we are going to end double session going into the next school year. Can you expand on that? How are we going to do that? What's the proposal here?
So what it's looking at right now is our Simon Sanchez with our Teaden High School working together. And we will make sure that the personnel also is addressed, the need, because we will be having close to about 23,000, 2,300, sorry. And so, you know, that's going to be something that we need to be prepping. The other one, so that's Teaden and Simon Sanchez. For FB, we are looking at possibly having some of our sixth graders continue at the current school where they're at. And, you know, and so that's like UPI, DL Paris, and possibly close to 100 of our students may be at Astumbo Middle School. And the reason is, again, Machanao is also saying that they do not have space. They have enough for the 5th grade from K to 5. And then Finagazan is about 12 students. So we're roughly looking at about 86 of our students being at Astumbo. And that too, we're working with the principal. All of them, actually, we're working with all our principals to see how we could make sure that this happens. As far as desks and chairs, we're going to be soliciting support from all our schools to be able to have that on time. And that's the reason why we are saying that, you know, we would like to have this announced once everything is pretty set and complete with master schedule and all that, transportation, then I believe we can generally announce that, you know, our kids will be getting their full-on instructional time.
This is very exciting, and Madam Superintendent, I think maybe you can expand on the history of this. I'm glad, because we actually discussed this when Mawar first hit, and we were having roundtables and discussions on how to mitigate this issue. But Teaden was always designed to be a rotational school, isn't that correct?
Yes, it was the original intent at the time before JFK was built is that Deaton, or the Cortec property, was able to house 2,600 students at that time. Thereafter, the superintendent Fernandez was told that the next school in line was Antolon Middle School, which happened, and it was renovated. Then the school after Antolon was supposed to be Simon Sanchez, and after Simon Sanchez, it was supposed to be GW. So that was the intent that was stated in the legislation. It wasn't codified, of course, but it showed the intent of the legislature that that's what that school was designed to be.
I want to just congratulate your team, and I'm sure that this is going to be fleshed out. This is very, very good news, and we're going to do everything we can working alongside you to make sure it happens.
Thank you. And if I can add, really to give credit to the leadership of our schools, because that in itself is really all about what will work for our kids as well. And again, students being center in this decision. Maximizing of resources is another one that our leaders have really pressed hard. For sure, I just want everyone to be aware that, our stakeholders, of course, will always say many things, right? But bottom line, it's about our students. We want to give back what our students are very deserving of, and that's the quality of instruction by giving them a full-on instructional time. So we're expecting some, people's thoughts and ideas about why are we going to do this, but we got to move on. It's all about moving forward and giving our students what they need.
I can tell you that, of course, you're always going to get that, but as a parent who used to have children, or at least a child in earlier grade school, I can tell you that even if it's out of district, I'll rather have a school on a regular time than a double session. And also with the fact that, it's been no secret that the schools are having issues with population, and there's lower population. So it only makes sense that you utilize these resources effectively. And, you're working smart. I think we can mitigate some of the inconveniences, but I can't think of anything more inconvenient than a double session, especially if I'm on the second session, depending on what your household looks like. So I want to congratulate you for being forward thinking. And yes, you'll take the bumps and bruises, but it's got to be much better than what the current situation is. Frank, I just want to get together with you on this and clarify the fiscal year audit that you're preparing for. So 25 is good to go. You've cleared that, and 26 is what you're talking about being on time or early, correct?
We're doing the 25 audit
25,
now.
right.
Yeah.
But
And
24 is cleared.
24 is done. The 25 is underway. We've met every request from Ernst & Young. Actually, we're asking them what's next. We do not want to be the holdup, because we realize that we stand before all the other line agencies for their audit. So we're doing everything we can to expedite it and get the audit completed so everybody else can get theirs done.
I don't want to break the news for the OPA tomorrow, because he'll be here with us in my oversight. So good enough, but it's good work, and I've been hearing great things. Thanks for your work going forward.
Thank you.
Really, I'm really done. I want to just ask you, Superintendent, going forward, I'm going to consider this challenges and findings. Would you accept the fact that in 3 to 4 months we come back, you would use this as a benchmark plus going forward?
Yes, I think that would be great. Yeah.
Team, do you feel confident you'll be able to report on this report having great success in terms of what's been identified here in challenges?
From my perspective, the grants are coming to an end. The money has to be paid. The invoices are coming out of the woodwork. So 3 to 4 months now, the dust will be all settled. We'll be able to give you a clean accounting for how it all settled down.
As I close, Mr. Chair, I'm happy about that, because I know it'll be a bumpy road when it comes to budget, which will be probably weeks from now. We're working on putting out a schedule. As you know, we have a compressed timeline this budget season. We will be voting on that budget July 17, so we're moving and we're turning and burning, and so we appreciate your aggressiveness, and so we'll discuss that when it comes to be. But as you said on your burn rate seems to be at least sustaining your operations for this time. We have the ability to use prior year obligations that are coming in as reimbursements, and so I think we can smooth this out and work on your budget going forward. But it looks to me like, at least from the fiscal perspective, the House will be in order, and we'll be able to see what we can do to move you forward. With that, Mr. Chair, thank you for the time.
Thank you, Senator Dueñas. Senator Batata.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the leadership of GDOE for being with us this morning, and welcome back, Superintendent. Welcome back to the House that you ran for such a long time. I just wanted to focus on page 17, if I could, and you're asking for legislative assistance, and I got to say that I am actually very probably supportive. Well, I probably will be supportive of, maybe unless you answer this question a little bit differently, asking for increased simplified acquisition threshold from $250,000 to $500K. How many projects, can you tell us on the record today, are you seeing right now that would necessitate why we have to make this move to a higher threshold?
What we found at the time when we, excuse me, when we found out about the pause for Tiny Eye, is that they were not able to put out one RFP, so they broke it up into two to stay under the threshold of
So
250.
it's only was one, as a result of just one single RFP?
We did two. We broke it up because we couldn't do it over $250 per.
So you're going to ask us to change public policy for just a single procurement?
No, what I'm saying is that because many of the contracts that we do have, especially when it comes to facilities, that they're always over.
Yes, and that's why I asked, how many are we talking about? Can you guys, someone give us a round number on the panel?
Well, you know, with the deferred maintenance backlog of $400 million, and you know, when schools need air cons, like say when Marwar went out, that was 2,500 air cons purchased at one time. So I'm not saying that they'll all be like that, but all of the schools need maintenance, and the maintenance doesn't, you know, because we've deferred it so long, it doesn't come cheap. But those that we can kind of break off, that makes sense to break off, 250 is a low number. So when you go above 250, you get tied into the whole procurement cycle to include all the 4 phases through the AG's office. So if, let's say it was 300 or 425,000, the ability to do that allows the projects to go along smoother, quicker.
Okay, and I'll ask it again. What is the total amount of projects that you guys were seeing that are above that threshold? Why I ask is when we asked GMH to say, they had a number. So can you tell us what that number is so we know what we're dealing with here in terms of scale?
Well, I can tell you, this is the second month here. The priority for me, at least for DFAS, was to not give back federal funding if you could obligate it. So lots of time has been involved in that. The analysis of the deferred maintenance costs and that kind of stuff was going to come after the immediacy of the, you know, the Tiny Eye.
No, Franklin, I get it. But if I know your experience here, is it 100 projects? Is it 200? Can you give me a number? Can anybody give me a number?
So, I mean, one example, I don't have the actual breakdown, but the 12 schools that were refurbished, there are 5 different areas, and that's, you know, 12 schools at 125 million. So what they're doing is every time they finish one particular project, then that's the dollar amount that's over $250,000. So they hold off on it until they send them to us, you know, cumulatively, so that we make one payment. But I don't have the dollar amount, but I know that it's $125 million for the 12 schools that are being refurbished. And just one example, maybe of electrical upgrade is $875,000. So that's one contract. Another contract is, wait, no, what do you have?
If you're
Can you go ahead and
asking for
interject? I'm sorry, hold on, Franklin. Can we have go ahead and interject?
Okay,
How many?
so for CNI alone, we do have probably about more than five contracts that require more than $500,000. For example, one example is really the Detainees. The second one is contract for college career readiness. One contract is about 1.2 million. The other one is probably about $600,000. So those are the ones that is on top of my head. But I know professional development also, when we put that out for proposal, that's more than $500,000 as well.
Okay, now why I asked, I don't have a lot of time, but what I'm asking is that before we come back and deal with this, it absolutely makes sense if you can tell us with certainty how many projects that would entail, because I think that the rest of my colleagues will want to know if we're getting in the way of 300 projects every year because of a simplified acquisition threshold, then there's a lot more appetite here to make that change. Or otherwise, I think most, probably the chairman included, would rather stick to it and just force that this behavior really should be prioritized versus trying to push out so many projects.
And there's just one that we just thought of, is that, like, for example, we said we're going to purchase buses, sped buses, and each bus is about $500,000. So
right, and then but
so
how many buses are you talking about, though?
6.
Okay, see, so that's what I'm trying to say, and
I'm sorry.
that at some point, no, but at some point, when we come back here, if we can really identify that helps the committee and it helps all of us. Because I was going to also talk about, when you think of public policies, I know we talked about SPED, and I think that special education, and based on the last hearing, is there a policy that you would recommend then that we could change so that we can make it a little bit easier? I agree with the chairman. We keep coming back here, or they keep coming back here. They've made this a plea every year. I can look at every YouTube video for the last couple of years. I've only been here for, 14 months, 15 months. I've heard it a lot. I heard it before this hearing. Could you recommend a special ed policy change that we can help you guys make to make things better for all of those 500 special ed children?
Yes, Senator. I mean, the mere fact that, you're asking for numbers, I think this is a great opportunity for us to go and pull all of the RFPs that we have issued and rank them, of course, from the highest to the lowest amount. More importantly, is the lowest amount at $500,000, and then
oh yes,
work
I'm good on that one,
Yes.
Speaker. I mean, I'm okay. You
But
got me on that
will
one.
definitely
But
get
when we
the-
talk about SPED policy, I'm hoping that you
Right.
guys can help us craft it,
So-
working with the chairman, perhaps.
Yes, most definitely we will. We'll work with the chairman on this dollar amount for the threshold.
Because I think I've heard it so many times, I can't even count anymore. And it makes sense that we should prioritize it. If it's a priority for this community, then we should try to create policy that matches it. The pleas, I'm hearing it. I had a bunch more questions. I could go on for another 2 hours. But I mean, for me, when I think about the policy that you guys are here asking, I'm encouraged by the fact that there's going to be a change for double session. Because I was there in 2009, and when we made the move to Tizen. And I remember that, 2,600. I think the speaker was like something like 24. It was still under. As long as we pull all the administrative offices out, there's going to be plenty of classroom space. And so my point simply is, I had other questions on using other facilities, but you guys offered today some hope. I know some of those folks at Tizen aren't going to be happy. And we're never going to make very many people happy, but it was designed to transition. And at some point, we'll have a new Simon Sanchez, we'll have a new GW, no one would have thought about Untalon Middle School. If you recall, everyone was a little bit hesitant to think that we can get Untalon Middle School done, and it got done. And they were able to use the Tizen facility in a way that helped education for all those in those schools. So I'm just here. Again, Mr. Chair, I think when we think of the policies as we head into the budget cycle, I'm hoping that if this doesn't get through individually, Mr. Chair, then hopefully we can put it onto the Budget Act. It sounds like DOE needs another lifeline, and I think we're here to provide it. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thanks, Senator Gumatata. Senator Barnett.
Mr. Chair, and I'm too encouraged by the news that the double session is ending. I'm not sure I want to pop the champagne bottles yet because Superintendent, as I'm sure you're aware, people talk. And we've been getting, my office has been getting a lot of concerns from the teachers, staff, who were saying that they've, and in fact, I think they might have even had meetings last night and last week, which was a little surprising to me because I think the last time that we spoke in the public hearing setting, you had talked about the plan for the temporary Simon Sanchez campus, which was going to be funded through a combination of FEMA funding, I believe, and then also through some scheme with the Guam Housing Corporation. So it kind of seems like you've already announced that Tijan and Sanchez will be, and I'm not sure logistically if it's going to be a combination of the populations or if we're going to do one day Tijan, one day Sanchez. Are you able to share any more details on that, ma'am?
So it'll be called, excuse me, it will be called Tijan Sharks. They will be along campus working together, leveraging their resources. So what I mean by this is that Tijan is a school recognized for its career pathways and academies. Having that opportunity for our students there, our Simon Sanchez students will also have that access. Simon Sanchez brings AP courses, quite a number of AP courses, and that too will be open for our kids at Tijan. So it's a win-win with leveraging the resources and the opportunities for our students. It is going to call our leaders to be flexible and adaptable and supported also to think outside the box on how we would do this. And with conversations of our two leaders, they are working on it right now. And hopefully they will also share how that will look like before the opening, because we have to start as soon as possible in getting this all set. Thank you.
So what does that then mean for the plans to construct the FEMA-funded temporary classrooms and or the temporary campus in Jigo for the Sharks?
I believe that is still going to happen. If everything goes well as planned and timeline maintained or met, then eventually our students will be in their home schools.
So then we're to take this as a kind of an interim solution where Sanchez and Tijan will merge, and then if the temp campus is completed up at the Jigo site, then Sanchez would then attend that campus until the construction of the new Simon Sanchez is completed?
Yes, and maybe our soup can add a little bit more on that, as that was a discussion we've had.
The last conversation we had with FEMA was that $8 million has already been deposited in the government, and the project was awarded already as well to Cortec to build the 20 temporary classrooms across from the parking lot of FBLG, and that is the acreage which is in front of the parking lot of the Guam Housing Corporation. That project, the turnkey, will be on June the 30th of this year. The 24 units at GHC also will be renovated to be used as additional classrooms, and the turnover key for that facility will be on July the 30th as well. So in the conversation in terms of making FB operate full-time is to do a different grade configuration with our sixth graders who are currently fifth graders to remain in the most part in their campus, provided there's space for them. So that's the different grade configuration. And those will be the sixth graders. Then the seventh and eighth graders then will occupy the 44 classrooms, which will be able to house, I think their numbers would be like 586, under 600, and the capacity for just the 20 right now can actually house 500 students. So naturally, you know, when you do your master schedule, you might instead have 25 students in the class rather than 20. The 28 was what gave us the 500 capacity level, but it could be lower, and hence, of course, the use of the 24 units as well.
So a whole lot of musical chairs going on this school year. And so now you're saying that temporary, what was supposed to be the temporary Sanchez class will be used to house some configuration of FB students while we await the completion of the repairs and renovations at FB Leon Guerrero?
Yes, and you heard that some of the things that we need to do, which is the fire suppressant, the internet, the collateral equipment, cafeteria equipment, and the renovation now of the gym that wasn't part of the FEMA project.
And Madam Superintendent, that's why you're requesting flexibility with how you're able to use your lapses, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so
Because it's going to take time to be able to order the collateral equipment, the instructional equipment.
I'm very encouraged that the chair of the Finance Committee, and it kind of sounded like the chair of the Education Committee, is supportive of this legislative assistance. The first one, anyway. I'm not sure about the second one. That's going to be a battle you have to undergo yourself. But it's very encouraging because during the budget process, I actually argued against this amendment that you're now seeking the legislature's help in amending, and my argument was that it handcuffed GDOE's ability to spend these lapses on the very areas that you're now asking us to allow you to spend the lapses on. And I'm encouraged that there's a lot of support up here on the panel because I've already introduced a bill that does just this in Bill 284-38. And that was introduced Friday afternoon. And what the bill does is it amends the budget law to allow GDOE to spend their lapses on instructional equipment, capital improvement projects, and other items identified as necessary by the Guam Department of Education. So I just pray that the Finance Committee, the Education Committee move quickly and in conjunction to hear this bill, because it definitely sounds like a lot of the things that we want to do with ending the double sessions are contingent on giving the department the flexibility that I argued to give you during the budget process. So if you could maybe send letters to the appropriate committees and ask them to quickly hear Bill 284-38, ma'am. And getting, is that to you in mind?
Thank you, Senator. I mean, I know that is really important because in order for us to purchase the collateral equipment, we're looking at two options. One is that with the FEMA monies, and we would be able to get the reimbursement, is that for the Prometheum boards, it has to be by Americans. So we know that that's going to take much longer to get to Guam. For the other collateral equipment is that if there are companies here who have, can work with a manufacturer either in China or Korea, then of course we know that those equipment can come in sooner. So the sooner, of course, we're able to get this RFP out for collateral equipment, the better it is. The Prometheum boards, we're just going to have to wait for it. We can use the whiteboards or TVs and other electronics.
Thank you for that, Superintendent Wampat. And again, I urge the support of my colleagues because the narrative, as you know, is now that GDOE has all of these lapses, so we don't need to fund them necessarily at a level that they're requesting. But if we narrow how you're able to use these lapses, it kind of defeats the purpose of that narrative. So I wanted to move on to Tiny Eyes, Madam Superintendent. I've been really getting a deluge of calls from parents, stakeholders in the special education community, and it kind of sounded like you were working on a couple different ways to resolve this abrupt disruption of services, which it's unacceptable, really. And I know that you had talked about a lack of a transition, and I found it respectfully a little ironic because when Superintendent Swanson came in, he said the same thing about your administration, that there was a lack of a transition. But, all that's said and done. So I think if you could just tell us which option you think will lead to the resolution of these tiny eye services the soonest, and if that's the option that you're intending to pursue.
Yes, we know that it's going to take some time for the RFP to be able to procure services. The teletherapy with Tiny Eye, the biggest obstacle, of course, with that is that it's over $500,000, it's at over $600,000. So therefore, I called last Friday the governor's office to request if she would authorize us and grant us an emergency to be able then to secure this services with Tiny Eye. So that's the goal. That's what we want. We want to be able to continue the services for these children who were receiving occupational therapy, and speech therapy. The other meantime, of course, while we're working on that, is that, and we are allowed by law, is that families who have insurance with any one of the carriers here are able to use their own clinics to receive occupational therapy or speech therapy, that they would go ahead and work with them, and when there's the co-payment, that the department will pay for that co-payment, that 20% co-pay. So that is the interim for now until we secure then the contract with Tiny Eye. So our legal counsel and our procurement officer are drafting the emergency procurement.
Okay, I mean, I understand you're trying to get as many options on the table, but I'm sure you know the one where you're going to allow reimbursement for securing of services for families who have insurance. Obviously, that leaves out a lot of families who don't have insurance. I just had one more, Mr. Chair, if you indulge me, and this is a commitment I made, and I've asked about this before. The parking lot and the road leading over to George Washington High School, as you know, there was a column recently written, and I was able to get to the Department of Public Works to lay out some cascal there, which with all the rain is really just a temporary solution. So are you guys involved in any discussion whatsoever with DPW or any relevant agency about a more permanent solution there at the home of the geckos?
Well, yes, I've actually, two things. One, of course, is the side road at GW, and we have communicated with Public Works on that. They have a contractor already working on the roads, and that would be an additional cost to the department. As for Price Elementary School, where I've asked Deputy Julie here to have her people, visit the area to look at what maybe our guys can do aside from actually either contracting it out, because we know that that will definitely be in the hundreds of thousands of dollars versus what our men can do. And not to our surprise, but we're very happy with what our maintenance workers are able to do, just like for them to do the repairs, which I don't understand why they couldn't have fixed these leaks at Southern High School, and they were able to do that now. And we're finding some things that our guys really can do, because they have been sent to Guam Trades Academy also to learn a skill. And by the way, I became a member of the Guam Contractors Association, so that then our guys will be able to go there to get the training that they need for free. So we can upgrade their skills. But yes, we're looking at many other things in which our workers can do the work. It'll be just now procuring either the cement or the materials for them to go and, well, I'm not a carpenter or what do you call it, mason, to be able to determine exactly what the needs are, but she has already
Thank you
assigned them to
for
look
that,
into it.
and expanding the opportunities for training for one of my favorite divisions in the department, facilities and maintenance. If the chair would, there was just one other thing that relative to the CBA positions, middle school counselor positions. I'm just hearing from some of the middle schools, and this is a very vulnerable population that, and I hate to bring this up, there's a lot of suicidal ideations with pressures facing this age group of students. So are you able to provide a status on those types of positions at the middle school level? Because I believe the recommended ratio is one counselor per 250 students. And I'm not sure, just according to reports I've received, if we're at that level at the middle school. Thank you.
Well, I know I have it broken down here by school counselors. I don't have the...
Maybe I can follow up with you
You're
offline.
right, I'm going to have to get it to you, but I know that we do still have some vacancies of school counselors. I don't have that number here, I'm trying to find it. Can I get back to you? But let me see. I have school health counselors. Where are the counselors? School counselors, there you are. You want to know specifically middle school? Okay, well, seven JFK, 5 GW, Stumbo 2, Ocean View 2, Antlan 2, Rios 2, Inalahan Middle 2, FB 2, Benevente 3, Agada 3. Those are all the secondary schools.
So those sound kind of about online, but thank you for that, Madam Superintendent. And, just to your management team, keep on moving forward. I love that part about in your presentation to keep moving forward. This is not an easy job. I don't think any of you expected it to be easy, and it's also great to get you here in front of the senators to be able to not just ask you questions, but to have the people of Guam and all the school stakeholders watch and learn this information as we do. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Burnett. Superintendent, just to clarify, because I know we talked about amending the law in regards to the lapses, you were supposed to submit a spend plan. Where are we at with that? Because I want to make sure that we clear that, because it's not like you've asked about it, you were supposed to submit a spend plan. Do we have a spend plan put together on the lapses?
Well, you're right. Of course, the spend plan that has been already decided actually by the board is exactly what we're following. And the other day when we met with the Finance Committee, we were working with
When you say the one approved by the board, are you talking about the spend plan for the lapses or spend plan for
spend plan for the department.
So for the department, you're talking about the appropriation, right? Not the lapses.
And so therefore, in order for us then to be able to spend for the lapses, you're right, we've indicated to the board that what we want to do is to do a breakdown of all the CIP projects that we kind of mentioned here to them for their approval. So we're all looking at CIP projects, deferred projects, maintenance at the schools, and collateral equipment. Primarily right now we're looking at FB Leon Guerrero. That's our primary spend plan. We're trying to get a breakdown of what the cost will be for each one of those. I only know so far for the collateral equipment, it's like $3 million, but I haven't gotten the breakdown from the others. Do you have it?
So the spend plan that was approved by the board accounts for the appropriation plus the 77 million?
No.
So that's where I'm confused. If we're saying that the spend plan is part of the...
It's the spend plan that we're looking at is for the local lapses, not the, we're not talking about the 51, we're talking about the 20, what was the number, 25? 26. That's what we're looking at right now. And when we get the breakdown of what those costs will be, we'll be submitting that to the board and then to you as well. But we will need to go to the board first.
Okay, yeah, we definitely need to meet and go over that with the budget chair, because that was one of the things that we were waiting on in regards to amending the law. Thank you, Senator Salas Metanani. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just kind of have mixed emotions about the presentation today. Painful at some points, but promising. Painful in a sense that we still hear about problems that you guys are being confronted with, and the issues with your lack of detailed conversations during your transition. That's really upsetting, but promising when I hear that double session is going to end for students at Simon Sanchez High School, and you're going to consolidate and have the Teeds and Sharks. So that's promising to hear. I did just have some questions just for clarification regarding, there was something that was mentioned related to RFPs and the solicitations and contractors coming back and saying, oh, well, that was not included, the installation was not included, and so you need to pay for that. So I'm just wondering, who writes your solicitations, your requests for proposals? Do these contractors do site visits? Do they submit RFIs? Who's doing that for you? Is it GDOE or is it GSA or DPW?
So yes to all of the above. It depends on the contract. Like DPW did the whole contracting process for Simon Sanchez, let's say. DOE wasn't involved in that. DPW did that. The mold mitigation and the fencing, the $20 million was moved out of DOE budget to GSA. GSA is doing that in its entirety. We're not necessarily in agreement with that. But the vast majority of other contracts are coming through the GDOE procurement office and the end users at GDOE, if that answers your question.
So are there any issues with the GDOE procurement division that you're kind of finding that needs improvement?
Well, I can tell you, for example, timing is everything. So when these grants start to look like they're going to start expiring, winding down, there becomes a lot more, let's spend the money on what we should have been spending all along. But that jams up the woodwork and the accounts payable, and then sometimes they need a purchase order, they need a purchase order change mod. All this comes down heavily. And it's rough to handle. But one of the things is that not all the buyers in the procurement office can handle contracts. They don't have the skill training level to deal with contracts. They're dealing with the purchase orders type things. So buyer ones do the purchase orders. Buyer two is a little more skilled, does the contracts. Last year, when we got into avalanche of activity coming down, we had one buyer two doing contracts that caused delays. We now have 4 buyer twos. So we're anticipating much more flexibility in that area. So, and also we're preparing a refresher training, because it's not just procurement that's putting the statement of works together. Draft statement of works are being done by end users. The grant managers themselves put together draft statement of work. So we feel it's necessary to come out with some refresher training to strengthen their knowledge on what should happen. Nobody anywhere should be approving contract purchase order mods casually. And or when a mod comes in, a modification comes in, it sits in somebody's table too long. So that's all part of the education process. It's not magical. It's attention to detail. It's attention to focus, refresher training, and we have our thumb on that pulse.
So this expired contracts, lack of contract, misplaced documentation, invoices, change order on page 2 of the presentation, is that all handled by the procurement division of GDOE?
Yes, that what you just said is internal to GDOE. We have a tracking system. That's one of the things we identified early on in the process. We now realize that nobody, because there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of different grant managers everywhere, nobody was tracking on one master tracker. when due dates were due, when RFPs were done, when invitation for bids went out. There was no master tracker. So it got away from us. Some of the deadlines, some of the due dates, some of the verbiage, some of the need. When a request for a change order comes in now, or a purchase order, that's going to go into the tracker. Everything is going to go into a tracker, so somebody will have visibility, which we didn't have before. So moving forward, that's going to lessen the pieces slipping through the cracks. So
Would you say that the procurement division of the Guam Department of Education then is the source of a lot of the problems when it comes to GDOE's finances?
Well, I guess I would caution that statement, because let's just say, for example, you were a grant manager and you had a $10 million grant, and you now needed to obligate and spend that $10 million grant, and you want to do some procurement activity, and you wait 6 months or 8 months or 10 months to request a PO. Well, you can now safely say it's the procurement office that needs to cut that PO, but nobody's saying that the grant office waited 10 months to even start doing a PO. So you have to be cautious here. Yes, it looks like it was in the procurement office, and that's a true statement, but when did it get to the procurement office? So.
Senator, if I can just add, and maybe you can provide some clarity. When we're looking at the various issues, and these are kind of a domino effect and compounding issues across the system, when you look at the responsibility of procurement, right? And procurement office is set up to do the general buying, but they're not and in most cases, they're not the writer of specifications. So if you're and GDOE mirrors general government, like the Department of Administration. So end users know what they need. They know the services and the contracts that they need, or they know the products and equipment that they need. They generally do requisitions, determination of needs. Procurement, along with legal, looks at the right procurement process to marry that to, and then the legality of formulating a contract or a purchase order. When it comes down to the problems that we're seeing, is you have issues at the specification levels, issues with procurement in terms of efficiencies, and then you have contract management issues. And procurement's not done when you put something and release it into a system and we get a contract. You have to follow it through beginning to end. We have a contract. In many cases, these are contracts for services such as Tiny Eye, or it could be a contract for monitoring your big refurbishment contracts. When you look at CIP, those are generally married to a construction manager, right? Someone who's overseeing that a change order is allowed. It's within the contractual scopes of work, and that it's funded and legal. So there's multiple levels of going from the procurement level into these issues that are surfacing. So one is, across the board, specifications can always be improved, but specifications guide the procurement. And if we say this is the contractual obligations, for instance, the air cons. If it says installations, then we hold our contractor to those installations. Is there any deviation from the contracts? Then we have to examine that with the correct professionals. But to answer your question, there's different levels within the department. End users have a role in serving the definition of specifications, scope of works, oftentimes. Procurement does the buying with legal's review, and then afterwards, there's a collective hand in contract management to ensuring the services are delivered and paid timely.
I wanted to ask a question regarding these task forces that you have in your presentation, because it was something that we would hear about from the previous superintendent, and it was regarding the consolidation and potential closure of schools. Is that something that's still on the table that the new leadership and the Guam Education Board are still pursuing?
Yes, I reactivated the task force for the decommissioning of schools. I had asked, as part of the transition, to be able to get a copy of everything that they've done, and I never received it. But when I reactivated the task force, then they were able to provide exactly the work that they had done. and that there are 3 to 4 different phases, and the superintendent then has decided to only proceed with phase 1. But there are other phases in which a lot of, and I was very impressed with the work that they did, because not only did they go out and work with the community, the mayors, they worked with public health to look at birth rates. They looked also at the actual school building capacity. They looked at the districting of the school children. It's amazing the amount of work that they did, and yet it had stalled. So we're having that conversation now because a lot of it really is a matter of underutilized schools, and financially whether we would be able to continue to operate the same number of schools when every year our numbers of students, our population is decreasing.
You mentioned, Mr. Leon Guerrero, this deadline at the end of this month. Is it for ARPA, the spend on ARPA money?
That's correct, ARP, yes.
How much do we have to spend, or how much is left over?
Well, approximately $30 million is on the table, which we are actively looking at. We have work that has been done on the refurbishment contracts of the schools, the 12 schools. That's ARP money. The problem becomes legal in some cases because some of the work was done, but the invoices weren't given during the time the grant was still alive. We're in the liquidation phase now. So there's lots of challenges, but we have had opinions. There is work that we can buy down. So of that 30 million, we're cautiously optimistic that the majority of that is going to be allocated against ARP. We can't say definitely in 30 days' time we can tell you how that dust settles.
And so if we don't get these invoices, we don't get this paperwork, what happens?
Then we look for local money because there's no other source. We put provisions in place. This is not going to blindside us going forward. We put provisions in place moving forward now in our templates and our language of our contracts and our purchase orders that you want to be paid, you have to submit it to this mailbox, this invoices. That will come into our accounting system. It will be recorded in our financial management system as we've got a potential liability here. Let's watch it. Let's take care of this. Now we go back to the end users to say, do what you need to do to work the paperwork to get this paid. We weren't having that before. It was working the opposite way. And now we've been beat up about that. Stuff's coming out of the woodwork. But moving forward with this template language, it will now be the contractor's fault if they don't submit invoices the way we've directed them to. So if we don't get the invoice in time, then they voided their payment because they didn't follow the procurement template specifications. So that will get their attention. Voiding their payment, they don't want to do that. They're going to submit the paperwork correctly. Moving forward, we'll better understand what's going on, and we'll better state the financial liabilities of DOE.
Well, thank you. It's good to hear that there's some changes, I guess, with how you guys are handling procurement, because it seems like it is desperately and direly needed. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have no further questions.
Thank you, Senator Salas-Manzanani. Real quick, so you said we were going to switch to local money. Is there a potential for us to lose any ARP money? Just based on your answer, it sounded like you said we may have to switch to local money. Or are we going to spend all $30 million? We going to draw down all $30 million?
Somebody told me that that's the phrase cautiously optimistic. We would spend 30 million tomorrow if we could, but some of the reasons that invoices start, to this day, we were supposed to have invoices last week from this company on the refurbishment. He didn't provide it. He then said today, Monday, before your oversight, we'll provide those invoices. He did not provide it. He provided an email, had tables in it. You cannot invoice tables, so I don't know what to tell you. I can tell you, and Franklin Cooper Nurse knows, we have been very aggressive. We've been very upfront. We need to know all of these charges. Time is running out. We've done everything we can to do that. So that's why I'm cautiously optimistic, but we're not there yet because not all the paper, the devil is in the details. The paperwork will be done within the next 2 or 3 weeks. The dust will settle. Then we can better answer those questions.
But I guess the question again would there be a chance though that we would lose some federal money because of whatever these issues are?
There is a chance. There is a chance.
How much do you think about an estimate?
I can't tell you because cautiously optimistic, I'd want to spend all 30. But like this invoice challenge from this vendor right now, if he doesn't put, there may be an invoice that we can pay, but we can't pay it if he doesn't submit it. So we'll know more in a few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Yangro. And now we'll go ahead and that'll conclude the portion for GDOE. We'll go ahead and transition over. Oh, is there something? Yeah, sorry.
Say something first, just for clarification and for the record regarding the transition, because I've heard from many of the senators regarding the lack of transition and things like that. So in my case, I would say that is not really the case for me because like what I mentioned earlier, there was a transition team 2 weeks prior, or 3 weeks prior we came in. Unfortunately, our contract was not signed until December 29. And just for the record, that the former deputy superintendent for CNI back then tried to reach out to me to do the transition. But it didn't happen on the face-to-face transition. It happened only during after December 29. So and I want to give him credit for really making sure that the division is stable and all those projects, including the professional development and other things that are needed for the school, are really rendered. Like what I said earlier, it's really about the administrative issues that we're facing, and those can be fixed as long as we follow the SOP. So I didn't want to discredit all the work that the former deputy superintendent of CNI really worked hard. He worked so hard. And I see that our project heads are really very hardworking people, a lot of hardworking people in the department. It's just a matter of how we can put these things in administrative or procedural things that we make things right so that, moving forward, that's what we need to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Rizzo. Dr. Okada. And Dr. Guthers, if you would like to join us at the front. And we'll just jump right into it. If you can just provide an update to the committee and the body or my colleagues where we're at in regards to the management audit that wasn't supposed to come out but came out. And I know the board has been deliberating on a position or stance on what they plan to do. If you could just provide an update to us, Dr. Guthers.
Mary Okada, Vice Chair, Guam Education Board. So I'll start off by the management and curriculum audit should have always been handled by the Internal Audit Office, and that was not the case. So when Dr. Wampak came in and we asked her to assign the issue with the management and curriculum audit to the Internal Audit Office, we, the board, members of the board, provided errors of fact that we wanted them to take a look at. Internal Audit compiled a list of all the different components that needed to be addressed. For example, our parent representative was not a senator. She was a parent representative, so we wanted that notation corrected, and several others. HR specialist instead of You know, there were some corrections. Dr. Guthertz, former politician. It should have said former senator. Ron McNinch, associate professor, Guam Community College. He doesn't work at the college. We wanted errors of fact corrected. So we provided input to the Internal Audit Office. They contacted the firm. They met with them. They submitted all the requests for consideration, and they should hear back by sometime this week the updated draft. That's the status.
Dr. Guthridge, were you going to say something, or?
Thank you, Senator, and good afternoon, Senators. Yes, as Dr. Okada said, we're awaiting a revised copy of the audit based on the input that we have provided to the auditor company. And, you know, we took a position on the board that, because there were some good ideas there that can be very helpful to our school system. And we will consider those and we will act upon those. And we were happy that we had the opportunity to provide input on things that were not totally accurate, that required some substantiation and more information that they obviously did not have that would clarify some of the things they were interested in. So that's where we are with the audit. And we're moving ahead and working on challenges for the department. The board is very pleased with our superintendent, our management team. We have a hands-off approach where we do not interfere in operations. And if there's a need for us to let the superintendent and her team know that there are some concerns that we have received, we immediately pass it on to the superintendent. That is the approach that I said I would adopt as chairperson, and I encouraged all the board members to do the same. And I think it's working.
Just one more. So once we get the updated audit, it will be put on the agenda for the board to take action. So we're just waiting for that final or the updated report to be provided to us so that we can take the necessary action.
What about, side topic from the audit, the transition though, since you were talking about the new leadership team, what happened during the transition when Dr. Swanson, you guys hired on Dr. Wanpat, what was the guidance from the board in regards to, and was there any oversight in regards to the transition from Dr. Swanson to Dr. Wanpat?
Well, of course, we asked Dr. Swanson to provide all the assistance possible for a smooth transition. And it's very interesting. We can only request. We cannot order. We don't have order authority. And a lot of people misunderstand the role of the board. If you look at the law establishing the elected board, we really are an advisory board. However, I have to tell you all, we push very hard. I've been on the board since January, and we give strong guidance as much as possible. I recall doing that numerous times with my fellow board members, with Dr. Swanson, to give it attention about certain things the public was concerned about, and parents and students were concerned about. And we cannot order, and there are limitations as to what we can do. But we're very pleased because, the board is there to help. And to do that, we need the cooperation of the superintendent and those at every level within the department. And I think we're sort of seeing a maturation with respect to that. That we know how to conduct ourselves. We're guided by a code of ethics. And I think we follow that code of ethics. And we enforce that code of ethics among ourselves. And we are are very pleased that we are able to have a good understanding with our superintendent and our management team. They are proactive. They know what needs to be done. They ask for our input, we give them the input. If there's something the board must act upon as a board in our meetings, our regular meetings, then we act upon them in a way that we believe is in the best interest of our school system. So that's how I would sort of speak to this. It's a kind of a different environment than the previous environment.
I guess my question is, and the other thing that we had to talk about was the grievance process and retaliation and that claim against the board. It was noted in the audit, and I'll tell you, my wife works at the department, so my wife can, and I'm not saying that this is only from her. I've heard it from, if not hundreds of employees across the department, even prior to me becoming a senator. How do we address that issue? Because I think that's one of the bigger issues in regards to board, I wouldn't even say governance or even just overstepping. And that is like the elephant in the room in regards to this audit.
Well, I have to tell you,
because
Senator,
if you're going to say that that's not the case, then my wife is lying.
No, I'm going to tell you that I have not seen that.
But how do we address that? That's the question.
Well, I don't think we're doing that. I can't speak for the past, Senator. I cannot speak for others.
But Dr. Griffiths, how do we address that?
I can only speak for myself.
But how do you address that concern and something that has come up not just in the audit, but in conversations across the department?
I don't know what you mean by retaliation. I really do not know. I have not seen that among board members. Now, I don't go to the schools to interfere. As a matter of fact, since I've been on the board, I have not gone to a school for a purpose other than a school activity and an invitation.
So as the board chair, what is the grievance process for employees who claim that they're being retaliated?
We have the GovGuam grievance process. The typical GovGuam grievance process is the process we have at the Department of Education. Any employee.
So what policy in the board, because you guys are a policy board, what is the policy for?
The policy is they may file a complaint, and if the complaint needs to go to the board to look at it, then we will look at it. But we have not received any complaints from any employee that I know of, except in one case regarding a superintendent search. That was the only time there was an employee and an applicant who sent us some complaints about not being selected as superintendent. But I don't know of any other complaints that have gone to the board other than at meetings when we have our public participation and people testify. But I have not seen anything significant coming from a DOE employee to the board.
So has the board considered adopting a grievance process within the department?
We already have one.
No, not to go to something that the board can address. Is there a consideration for the board? Go ahead, Dr.
Well, I mean,
Okada.
if it's necessary, of course we will do that. Yes, we will. Absolutely. Now, complaints, there's always going to be complaints, especially amidst a time of change. You've heard from the management team. They are setting deadlines. They're setting work expectations. And things are a little different now than they were. I've dealt with change. I've dealt with change at a bigger institution. I had to enforce some changes. Change is not easy to accept unless the individuals involved see the value of the change. And that's what our team is doing. They're trying to impress upon employees at all levels that there will be change. We need to be flexible. We need to perhaps undergo additional training for new types of procedures. And we should all welcome that because it enhances our abilities when we learn new things, how to do things better. Now, in the past, it may have been different because I wasn't there that long in the past, right? I was only here as a board member since January of 2005. And I think the board is very conscious of its role. And we want things to be better at our school system. We're working very closely to support our superintendent and our management team and others in the department And we're seeing a change, starting to come more cooperation, I think more understanding, more commitment, and we're moving forward. We're moving forward.
Thank you. Dr. Okada, were you trying?
So Senator Borja, regarding complaints against the board, there is a provision in the law that requires us to notify, I believe it's the legislature, and I can remember at least twice where, as the chair, I had to do that. And I believe once or twice may have been with Senator Barnett, maybe both. And so after notifying the chair of the committee, I met with legal counsel on 2 separate occasions. And in one case, met with the employee filing the grievance. And then it was assigned to, in both cases, assigned to members of the board to do the investigation. And they would come back and provide their findings. So in the 2 cases that I'm aware of, it went through that process. We were guided by legal counsel, and it went through a review, and the members of the board provided their findings to the board. Those are the only 2 that I'm aware of, and it's specifically for grievances against board members, not employees or anything else, just grievances against board members.
Thank you for that, Dr. Okada. I'll go ahead and open up the panel for questions. Senator Duenas.
Just Masi, Mr. Chair, I think we've been over a lot of this, but I guess just for the purposes of what the agenda is calling for, I think I've seen in the media that the board publicly is stating that they will continue to review and adopt some, and also have some comments on some of the issues that were noted in the
I would say I'd like to review the procedure that was used previously. This was before 2005. It's quite a while ago. And let's see if we can look at that and maybe update it if necessary.
I think what the curiosity more than anything else and the back and forth, I mean, I know this probably sounds like an easy question to answer, but I think it's important is, I mean, are you taking it seriously? I think this is what seems to be out
Senator,
there.
I want to assure you that this board is very serious about its role. No one would intentionally want to ignore anything that requires our addressing or our participation.
The good thing about an audit, or any kind of audit, is to provide feedback based on reviewed documentation and evidence conversations. And it's always incumbent upon the receipt of the final document that the board, in this case, the department, identify and take corrective actions to address those findings, whether you agree with it or not. And sometimes you can agree to disagree, you can take a look at it, you can say, here's how we're gonna do it going forward, because this particular type of audit is not necessarily as prescriptive, or could be prescriptive, but how we approach it might be a little bit different, and the end result would still be the same. So we would take this as constructive criticism based on a review, and if it requires us to communicate more to the constituents and to the stakeholders, and to be a little bit more aware of how we appear or how we interact, then so be it. We just need to take the corrective action, identify how we're going to address it going forward. But audits are not a bad thing. They're not a bad thing. And so once the audit is in its final stage and approved or adopted by the board, whether they adopt it or not, there is a lot of good information in there that we can take to heart and make improvements, not just for the department, but for the board included.
And that's where I wanted to land, because to me, I think what it is, I mean, you've got a board that comprises of X amount of members, and you have, you're going to have different approaches. Mm-hmm. I've heard from people at schools that say, I'm glad, I have this board member that advocates, she calls the senators, or he calls the senators, and, says, hey, you need to pay attention to this. And sometimes that can be misperceived, right? I mean, the advocacy is not stepping over the bounds sometimes, but then sometimes from another person can perceive that, hey, why are you interfering, right? So I know there's different approaches. Dr. Guthridge, you talked about how that's not your management style in terms of, you wait for reports to come up to the board and address it at that level. People are different, right? And so I think you're right, Dr. Okada. I think, if anything, I hope this is the finality to it when you approach it. And the final analysis is that what you would find is, there may be our approaches and maybe professional training internally once again and reviewing what you're designed for and what the design is, so that you don't have some of these probably back and forths or clashes that may have happened because you have different personalities and you have different approach to how people feel that they can help education. And that may be where, now when it comes to grievances and when it comes to issues where, individuals within the system feel as though they're threatened, or that they feel as though that some of that contact might mean that, that their employment or any other things are, that's uncalled for, and that has to be addressed right away. And I expect that to be reported to the board and be addressed at that level. But I think maybe some of the perceptions could be, like I said, even myself, I've gotten calls from board members before saying, I know they get upset with me because I point out that I drive my car up there and I saw that the fence wasn't fixed, and and I listen, and then I try to work with the requisite individuals internally and say, hey, where's this at? Because, you have board members that take this to the level of driving by the schools and, seeing what things look like, and they have their push to try to make things happen. And so that can be looked at a couple of different ways sometimes, but I think we all understand where we are with this, I hope, and I just hope that the final analysis on this comes out to the findings that you have and internally you meet as a board and decide that, look, you're going to continue to discuss it, and everyone will understand, their role and should know their role. That the audit is good. It's something, a piece of work to work with, and then moving forward, that's where I'm at with it. So I hope that that's the final disposition of it. And I appreciate the fact that you've been open and frank, and you understand. But you also, you do have that right when you got, errors that are, kind of large that are represented as well. And, that speaks to the care of the audit too. I mean, to get people's positions messed up and things of that's not a small thing in terms of when you're paying that kind of money, that should be very, very correct and accurate. So, there's a balance, right, to it in terms of how the approach is. But I'm appreciative of at least the two of you coming forward and other board members that I've spoken to that, it's not something that they're just brushing off. But there's always balance to the discussion. That's really all I have to say, Mr. Chair.
Thanks, Senator Dueñas. Senator Gumtata.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being with us and the reminder that you are elected too. So thank you for all that you do in service to the people of Guam. And I think my only observation, and I missed the last oversight hearing, but I'm here now, but I think my observation from today is that you have an audit. I agree with Senator Dueñas. When you're spending that kind of money and folks aren't taking their job seriously, we just came off of nearly 3 hours of this testimony from your management of GDOE. So I'm hoping that the folks that are doing that audit for you are listening, that do your job, because you're recommending these folks to do theirs. And I'm hoping they can get it squared away. And then I'm thinking that at some point, Dr. Guthridge, you probably could agree or disagree with me, but some of the stuff that this employee grievance or these modernization of some of the policies, that's probably going to also come out publicly. Is that probably a fair assessment, that on top of just so many other things, they're going to ask you to modernize some of the policies that are put forward by the policy board?
Yes.
Well, Mary, what is your thinking on that?
Yeah, we'll update.
Or Mary?
Yes, the management audit is a good tool for us to identify some of the policies that need to be updated. Not just and there might be some legislation that needs to be updated as well.
No, and when I think about policies, I mean, the idea of walking to school, I think we can save some bus money I live in Talafofo, and I think we have this thing, and I think my neighbors might get mad at me when I say this, but we talk about if we're going to try to get kids a little bit more healthier. I see a bus stop every day, Talafofo. I use the best one, it's Ora Chalampago. We're all driving Route 4. The kids sit there for like 20 minutes. We're stuck in traffic for 20 minutes. If they went across the street, walked across the crosswalk, they would be in school faster than I would have probably moved through a red light. And I think that they probably would be healthier for it. Same with the kids in Talafofo. I know the policy is within 1 mile of a school. I think I brought this over and over again to previous iterations of this group over the last year. It's 1 mile from the school, and kids we could save money on busing if they would walk. The schools they're great school communities that we all live in. We have to have some faith in those school communities that people will look out for young people as they're walking to and from their homes, especially when they're within 1 mile.
And I think part of the decommissioning process that the superintendent is continuing to review will identify if we need to do some redistricting, because that seems to be an issue that comes up all the time. I live across the school and I have to ride a bus to go to a different school.
Right, and that's my point, is that I'm hoping, from a fitness point of view, perhaps, but secondly, probably more practical, is the sheer amount of money that we spend with Public Works to fund bus operations. And yes, if we redistrict, there will be more and more kids who will be living outside of the 1 mile, call it diameter of a school, that perhaps in 2026 and beyond, we could be a little bit more practical with how we look at our school communities. Maybe is Talafofo Elementary School, as an example, one model area to look at for that, or maybe some other schools district-wide, but there's so many ways we can save a little bit more money and be more practical with the policies. And I think it might begin with you, when this management audit's complete, on top of, grievances and the like. I'm hoping that can be also done.
Yes, Senator, actually, I agree with you. And I think our department leadership will be looking at that as part of their evaluation as to the best use of the schools in terms of the communities around the schools. I remember growing up on Guam, walking to school. And it was motivating, actually, to walk to school. And students would be joining you who live in the vicinity that you do, and you'd walk together and develop friends and things like that. I think the key, though, will be safety and cooperation of the public, drivers, to be careful, children walking to school and things of that nature. We have to have a big public information program.
And Dr. Guthers, I don't mean to interrupt, but when you look at that particular policy, if you look at when it was actually written, it was way years and years ago. And I think some of our safety concerns, while there are many, but I mean, at what point are we not taking more pride in our school communities? Again, I can only speak for mine in Talafofo, but I really believe that if we all do it one area at a time, that these kinds of things, I mean, there's going to be a cost savings automatically. And just the strange look you give kids when they can easily walk 20 yards to a school when they open at 7 o'clock or whatever the case might be.
Well, Senator, we will definitely bring that up with our superintendent and encourage her to evaluate that as part of our ongoing actions to look at costs and viability.
All right, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for being here, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the time.
Thanks, Senator Gumba Tautau. Senator Barnett.
Hey, Sujus Masi, Mr. Chair. Madam Chair, please don't take that up with the superintendent. I've heard some of my colleagues talk about this before, but back in the day when I used to walk to school, maybe you used to walk to school, completely different island. I don't need to recount the times that we've had kids, unfortunately get snatched off the street walking from the bus stop. Young ladies getting raped. I don't even know why we're talking about when we cut corners, we shouldn't be cutting corners for the kids. You want them to walk a mile to school when we don't even provide a damn sidewalk for these kids? It's about the priorities.
Senator, I said we'd look at the viability.
I know. And I think that for me, it really kills the conversation right off the bat because, unless we're going to ensure that these kids are going to be safe. I mean, you know, my kids stay a mile away from the school, but they would have to cross Marine Drive, you know? And I'm just not comfortable as a public school parent of, you know, a couple public school students. I think that we should be looking for ways to provide more support for our kids. You know, if you want them to get the exercise, then let's invest again in ways that they can do that, whether it's in school or outside of it. So I just had to interject on that because I can't believe what I'm hearing at some points. But with the audit, I think for me what a big issue was, and I've said this before, is I don't think sending the audit back to the company that did it to correct some of these errors of fact is going to change the significant findings or the high priority recommendations. And so Vice Chair Okada was very encouraged by what you had said because, you know, you're sitting next to each other and the board chair seems to think that no board member has ever berated or harassed an employee, and you've provided evidence that it's actually happened. And I think more importantly, the chair and I attended a hearing at the GDOE headquarters where we heard from multiple employees who said that this is reality. And when we talk about, because I know board member McNinch keeps saying that, oh, well, there's a process, you know, they need to go through this process. Well, I'm going to tell you, these employees, they don't trust the process. And that's why we're not seeing the complaints. And those are just facts. So I'm absolutely willing and open, you know, if it's about the errors of fact when we get the audit back, I'd be willing to have these uncomfortable conversations because the audit was critical of the board, not just in the way some board members have engaged with the employees and the public, but also in the updating of the policies that was mentioned before. So there are a lot of great things in this audit. And, you know, I might be a little bit biased because it was my public law that mandated that we perform this audit. But, you know, it just frustrates me to hear a lot of the same things that were said the first time they did this management audit, which was with the Evergreen Company, I think way back in 2009. And so obviously we spend this amount of money, we shouldn't be trying to throw the audit into the trash can. And so I'm very encouraged that that's not what's happening here. I think, Madam Chair, you kind of came out a little hard in the last hearing about just kind of discounting a lot of these key high priority recommendations that the audit made. You know, I can get it that they didn't get a title right or whatever, but I think those core findings, and you know, they're backed up by evidence that the vice chair has told to the committee. I mean, we hear so many stories anecdotally about, you know, board members at the schools. I mean, you watch some of these board meetings, they make us senators look like we're singing Kumbaya with each other. Because, you know, you turn on a board meeting and you have board member yelling and berating people. And so I think that I'm encouraged definitely to hear that, especially with Vice Chair Okada, that you're acknowledging these findings and there's a commitment to look at them when we get the audit back and it's hopefully free of the errors of facts. So I just wanted to put that on the record, Mr. Chair, and Sidus Masi again for the time. And I know this has been a very long hearing, so I thank you again for being here and providing the information and the answers that the people of Guam deserve. Sidus Masi.
Thank you, Senator Barnett. Was there an estimated, did you guys give a time frame on a response from the auditors in regards to the corrections before it comes back to the board?
So we've been working with the management audit team, and one of the things that we're working with them, as Dr. Okada said, was again, just to make sure that we do address the errors of fact. Audits are meant to be critical. It doesn't have to be adversarial. We do want to look at the merits of the audit, but in order to do that, we have to make sure that those audit findings are based on facts, right? So they're going through the process. A long list has been compiled, shared amongst all the deputies in the respective divisions to make the updated revised changes. And I do want to say for the record, because I do know that they are listening, that we're working with them. They've been collaborative. They've offered this process since September 15. So an initial draft did come into GDOE on September 15 with a scheduled meeting with the superintendent and his management team on September 18th. There wasn't any input then. So the management audit team decided to, because they received no concerns or no feedback, issued the report on September 30th. When Dr. Judy arrived as the superintendent, she did assign us to go through this process. We looked at the information. We found out that the draft hasn't been, and like Senator Barnett said, I don't know if it's going to make a substantial change to where they're issuing their findings, but again, we have to agree to what the relevant facts are. We can't have facts in there that are inaccurate. So they're going back and they're welcoming of changing the report, and they've also cautioned that some of it will be accepted, some of it may not be accepted. And then from there, they gave us by no later than the end of the week to get a revised draft with a scheduled meeting with the superintendent and the deputies on the 27th is the target date.
And Dr. Guthertz, I guess my question is, aside from waiting on the audit, right? Because I don't think we need the audit to tell us about a lot of the problems within the department. A lot of the problems that were highlighted in the audit are problems I've at least been able to gather just from talking to people within the department over the last year, and even, I have a lot of family members that work for the department and close friends that have been in the department. And do you think that there are things that the board, aside from waiting for this audit to come back and waiting for the board to adopt it and approve it, and then do you think that there are some things that the board can do immediately to address some of the things in there that you don't necessarily need the audit to tell us?
Senator, the board acts proactively, whether it's the audit or something else. We don't wait just for recommendations to act. The board itself is very proactive, and we work closely with the superintendent on issues that we know are prominent to ensure they're being addressed. And as you heard today with the briefing from our superintendent and her management team, things are being addressed with the full support of the board. And we're not interfering. We're encouraging that these issues that have been longstanding be addressed. We've always done it. I don't think we've ever stopped doing that as a board. We're not an impediment to the department addressing issues. We support the department addressing issues. And we're looking with confidence through our superintendent to make sure the issues are addressed. The board, I think, people don't know the board and don't understand how the board operates. We follow what's required by law, and we're there to support the department. We're not there to stop the department from doing things. We have a lot of questions that come up from time to time, and those questions get clarified. And if we have a difference of opinion, we try to sit down with the superintendent and get more information or provide more perspective to help come up with solutions. But we're there in a proactive manner. If you look at our department, our board agenda for our meetings, you can see they're very demanding meetings, our monthly meetings. We cover an awful lot. And we're seeing progress. And the progress comes from the employees in the department at all levels. At all levels. And I see them working together.
And I think my biggest, I wouldn't say concern, right, is that when we look at a lot of the concerns that have been raised from principals to teachers to staff members to parents, the issues that were brought up within the audit, right, they're not new. I mean, I looked at the Evergreen report. A lot of the issues there are similar. I think my concern is, even during my short time, 13, 14 months as the Oversight Chair, the Department of Education has some of the most, for an underfunded agency, has some of the most dedicated professionals who do everything to support the students. When I think of just even my wife and her school and the things that she does, even before I became a senator, that was frustrating in regard to just doing the things that they need to do to ensure that the students are supported, they have the resources to keep the school going, whether it be from PBIS to literacy to providing tables and buying supplies for students, and this was before ARP. The one thing that when I speak for a lot of, maybe even thousands of or hundreds of the employees, where they feel like there's no support from the board. And
That's
you
just
can
not
only
true.
speak for now. And again, unless my wife, I can only speak really, and this is where, and it's not personal because again, my wife, yes, says things, but there's hundreds of employees that I've spoke to.
Senator, may I ask a question?
And my question is, what is your commitment to these people in the department?
I'm very confused by you saying that you're not sure, they're not sure of the support of the board. Every day we work together as a board to support our school system and our employees and our students. That's why we're there. No one on this board would have run to be a member of the board if we didn't have that commitment. We don't control what happens inside the department.
Dr. Guthers, I'm sharing, again, this is a sentiment across the
What do they
department.
want the board to do that we don't do?
That's on you. I'm sharing you, I'm speaking, a lot of them are scared to speak, and that's the thing. Most employees are scared to speak to the board.
I'll make a suggestion to you, and this is with great respect and sincerity. Because I've gotten to know these board members, and I know their level of commitment. But we do not operate the department. We work through the superintendent. Yes, at times there may be some who are very vocal about issues and concerns, and maybe at times too vocal. And I agree that shouldn't happen. But this board is 100% supportive of the Department of Education. It has been that way since the very beginning of the elected board. I've only watched it for the last year closely, and I see the commitment. Now, there are issues beyond our control. Some of them involves this legislature getting the support we need for our school system too, involves the policymakers, whether it's the legislative branch or the executive branch. There are limitations on what we can do. And you saw it today, Dr. Wonpat was very open with you folks talking about certain needs that the school system has that they're going to have to come back to you and ask for support. Whether it's amending a law or interpreting a law a little differently so that we can expand how we use funds to meet the needs of the school system. We can't do it alone. That's not within our realm to control that. But I don't understand, I've worked in academics for years. And at one time, I handled faculty, I handled all the academic streams at the university as vice president of academic affairs, University of Guam. And I used to get a lot of complaints. Some of the complaints had merit, some of them didn't. But one by one, it was part of my job at that time, I was an administrator, to solve the problems. And I did. But we worked through our management leadership in the department. When I get a complaint, I get complaints on my phone. Someone says, hey, doctor, I'm a teacher here, and this has happened, can you please help? And I'll refer it to the superintendent and ask her to address it immediately. We had one complaint that came from a concerned citizen regarding a student who was out of school and should have been in school and was having difficulty to get enrolled into the school system because she did not have certain documents, such as a birth certificate. And we contacted the superintendent immediately, and she assisted in helping that family get the document that was needed so that their daughter could go to school. Those are the kinds of things that the board members receive occasionally, and we address it, but we address it through the management leadership at the department. That's not something we can do ourselves. So I hope that you look at things a little objectively when you get a lot of complaints and ask yourself, are the complaints because change is occurring, changing procedures, change in policies? Or is it because of animus, maybe not liking certain people? Is it a legitimate complaint? If it's a legitimate complaint, of course we want to deal with it. But complaints that I see, a lot of see, and one of the issues with the management audit was they were anonymous. There was no documentation of a complaint. Just hearsay was included in the management audit. And that's what upset board members. Coming from the academic realm, I'm used to documentation. You have a complaint, who made the complaint? It's like going on Facebook and not using your name, using some phony name. We have a right to know the legitimacy of complaints, not just complaints that are broadly stated with no documentation. So some of that was missing in the audit. But I would like to also say, the last time I was here and I was asked by the audit, I made it very clear that we would look at the good things in that audit and we would act upon them. And our department's doing that. There are things we have to clarify that could have been clarified much earlier had we had initial access to the draft. But the process in sharing that information with the board took a little while. And we took the time working with the management of the department to address all those things that needed clarification and to provide information to the company that did the audit that was more factual for them to look at. So that would be my response, sir.
Thank you, Dr. Guthers. And one last question. We've asked the former chair his position on changing the governance or the structure of the board from elected to a fully appointed.
Yeah.
His position was, he said, get rid of the elected boards. What's your position in regards to?
Well, this is my position, and I've been on all kinds of school boards on Guam. I was an appointed board years ago. I was an elected board. The governor challenged our organicness. The elected board was abolished. Appointed board came back. And then the legislature wanted to amend the Organic Act so they could have an elected school board again. So I've been on all these different board forms. My suggestion would be, look at these different models and look at our current model. There's 7 or 8 different school board models across the United States, and see if there's one that's better. I only want one that will help our school system, the best one. And there's different models. One is leaving it the way it is. One is giving it governance authority. One is turning it back over to the governor for appointments. That's your decision. And of course, whatever bills come up, we would comment on and give you our best response to. But I will support anything that supports our school system. And if that means changing the current system, fine. What makes things better? What makes things more efficient, more cost-effective, more workable? And that's where the senators have to do a lot of thinking and research. It shouldn't be something that's just done overnight. I think the model should be looked at and they should be shared with the public, get public input, and make a determination. If you don't think this model is working, then change it. That's my position.
Thank you, Dr. Guthers.
Yes.
That'll conclude the portion for the Guam Education Board. Actually, that'll conclude the public hearing. The committee will continue. Thank you, everybody, for coming down today. Dr. Wonpat. We look forward to probably an update maybe right before budget hearing in regards to your challenges. What we're looking for really in the follow-up is some kind of plan and timeline in regards to some of the things and how we can support you, of course, especially here at the legislature. And then we'll continue to work with the budget chair in regards to the, I guess we'll call it the supplemental spend plan for the additional, for the lapses, the 77 million that we've been talking about.
That's very important.
But other than that, thank you everybody for coming today and sticking with us. Thank you to the listening audience. The committee will continue to accept written testimony within 7 days from today, which may be addressed to myself, Senator Vincent Borja, Chairman of the Committee on Education, Libraries and Public Broadcasting, or mailed to DNA Building, Suite 502-238 Archbishop Flores Street, Agutna, Guam, 96910. You may also send your testimonies to contact@senatorvinceborja.com. This afternoon's joint oversight hearing is now adjourned. The time is now 5:33 p.m. Thank you. Good day, everyone. testimony to